Columbus Police, what's your emergency?
Hi, yes, my friend didn't come home last night. We were all out together and he just disappeared.
When did you last see him, ma'am?
Around 2 a.m. at the Ugly Tuna Saloona. He was there 1 second and then he was just gone. We've been looking everywhere.
What's your friend's name?
Brian Shaffer. He's a medical student. This isn't like him at all.
On the night of April 1, 2006, a 27-year-old medical student walks into a bar in Columbus, Ohio. Security cameras capture him entering through the main entrance at 9 p.m. He's seen on camera multiple times throughout the night, talking with friends, ordering drinks, chatting with strangers. At 1:55 a.m., cameras catch him for the final time, talking to two young women near the bar entrance. Then he turns, walks toward the back of the bar, and vanishes completely. Here's what makes this case so baffling: there was only one entrance to the bar. One way in, one way out. And that entrance was covered by security cameras operating all night. Police reviewed every frame. Brian Shaffer is seen entering the bar, but he is never seen leaving. Hundreds of people left that bar between 2 a.m. and closing time. Every single one was captured on camera. Except Brian. He simply disappeared into thin air. No body has ever been found. No trace of him has ever been discovered. And despite one of the most extensive searches in Ohio history, no one knows what happened to Brian Shaffer. Did he walk out through an unseen exit? Was he killed inside the bar and his body smuggled out? Did he stage his own disappearance? Or did something else entirely happen, something we haven't even considered? This is Cold Case Dossier, file number 002. The Vanishing of Brian Shaffer. The man who walked into a bar and never walked out. Brian Randall Shaffer was born on February 25, 1979, in Pickerington, Ohio. A suburb of Columbus with tree-lined streets, good schools, and a strong sense of community. Brian was the second son of Randy and Renee Shaffer. His older brother, Derek, had been born 2 years earlier. The Shaffer family was solidly middle-class, hard-working, and tight-knit. Randy worked as a contractor, building homes and commercial properties throughout central Ohio. Renee was a homemaker who later worked part-time as a secretary at a local elementary school. They lived in a comfortable ranch house with a big backyard where Brian and Derek spent countless hours playing. Friends and family described Brian's childhood as normal, happy, and unremarkable in the best possible way. He wasn't a prodigy or a troubled kid. He was just Brian. A regular kid who loved basketball, video games, and hanging out with friends. Brian attended Pickerington High School, graduating in 1997. He was a solid student, not valedictorian, but consistently on the honor roll. He played on the varsity basketball team, though he wasn't a star player. Brian was the kind of teammate everyone wanted, his high school coach later recalled. He showed up to every practice, encouraged his teammates, never complained. He made everyone around him better. That quality, making everyone around him better, would define Brian throughout his life. Brian was naturally charismatic without being flashy. He had an easy smile and a quick wit. He could talk to anyone about anything, making people feel comfortable and valued. He wasn't the loudest person in the room, but he was often the one people gravitated toward. Brian had this way of making you feel like you were the most interesting person in the world, a high school friend said. He'd ask you questions, really listen to your answers, remember details from conversations weeks earlier. People loved that about him. After high school, Brian attended Ohio State University, just 30 minutes from his hometown. He initially considered going out of state. He'd been accepted to several universities, but ultimately chose Ohio State for practical and emotional reasons. It was affordable, close to family, and offered excellent programs. Brian declared a major in microbiology during his sophomore year. He'd become increasingly interested in medicine, fascinated by how the human body worked and how diseases could be treated and prevented. His grades were strong. He maintained a 3.6 GPA throughout his undergraduate years. But Brian wasn't all work and no play. He joined Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity during his freshman year. He made lifelong friends, attended parties, and enjoyed the social aspects of college life. He dated casually but nothing serious until his junior year. That's when he met Alexis Wagoner. Alexis was a nursing student, 1 year behind Brian. They met at a fraternity mixer in fall 2003. "I noticed him right away," Alexis later recalled. "He was standing with a group of guys, but he wasn't trying to show off or be the center of attention. He just looked genuine." Brian approached Alexis during the evening, and they talked for hours. About their families, their career aspirations, their favorite bands and movies. "We had this instant connection," Alexis said. "It wasn't just physical attraction, though he was definitely attractive. It was deeper than that. We just clicked." They started dating shortly after and quickly became inseparable. Brian's friends noticed a change in him. He was calmer, happier, more grounded. "Brian was always a good guy," one friend said. "But with Alexis, he became a great guy. She brought out the best in him." By 2004, Brian and Alexis were talking seriously about the future. Marriage. Kids. Building a life together. Brian graduated from Ohio State with his bachelor's degree in microbiology in spring 2004. That summer, he worked as a research assistant at the university's medical center, helping with studies on infectious diseases. The work confirmed what he'd been thinking for years: he wanted to be a doctor. Not a researcher locked in a lab, but a practicing physician who worked directly with patients. He applied to medical schools in fall 2004. His application was strong: good grades, solid MCAT scores, excellent letters of recommendation, and genuine passion for medicine. He was accepted to several schools but chose the Ohio State University College of Medicine. Again, staying close to home, close to Alexis, close to family. Brian started medical school in August 2004, just weeks after his 25th birthday. Medical school is notoriously difficult. The first 2 years are spent primarily in classrooms and labs, memorizing vast amounts of information: anatomy, physiology, pharmacology, pathology. The workload is crushing. The stress is relentless. The competition can be brutal. But Brian thrived. Not because it was easy, it wasn't. But because he genuinely loved what he was learning. Brian would get excited about the weirdest things, a classmate recalled. "We'd be studying some obscure disease, and Brian would be like, 'This is so cool. Look how the body tries to compensate.' The rest of us were just trying to survive, but Brian actually loved it." Brian wasn't at the very top of his class. There were students with higher test scores, students who grasped concepts faster. But Brian excelled in the areas that really mattered for a physician: empathy, communication, bedside manner. During clinical rotations, professors noted how naturally Brian connected with patients. He'd sit at their bedside, hold their hands, listen to their concerns. He treated patients as people, not just cases to be solved. Brian would have been an outstanding doctor, one of his professors said. He had the knowledge, yes, but more importantly, he had the heart. That's something you can't teach. By spring 2006, Brian was nearing the end of his second year of medical school. He was on track to graduate in 2008 and begin his residency. He'd expressed interest in family medicine or internal medicine, fields where he could build long-term relationships with patients and their families. His life was proceeding exactly as planned. Great girlfriend. Promising career. Supportive family. But then, on March 24, 2006, everything changed. Brian's mother, Renee, was visiting family in Toledo, Ohio, about 2 hours north of Columbus. She was 55 years old and had been in seemingly good health. 2 years earlier, she'd been diagnosed with myelodysplastic syndrome, a rare bone marrow cancer. She'd undergone treatment and had been in remission for over a year. The doctors were optimistic. The family thought she'd beaten it. On the afternoon of March 24, Renee was at her sister's house, helping prepare dinner. Without warning, she collapsed. Her sister called 911 immediately. Paramedics arrived within minutes and rushed Renee to the hospital. But it was too late. Renee had suffered a massive hemorrhage caused by the cancer returning aggressively and without warning. She died at the hospital within an hour of collapsing. Randy and Brian received the call at 6:30 p.m. They were both in Columbus, Randy at home, Brian studying at his apartment. Randy called Brian immediately. "Son, you need to come home right now. It's your mother." Brian knew from his father's voice that something terrible had happened. He drove to his parents' house in Pickerington, breaking several speed limits. When he arrived, his father was sitting in the living room, staring at nothing. "She's gone," Randy said simply. "Your mother is gone." Brian collapsed into a chair, unable to process what he'd just heard. Just that morning, he'd talked to his mother on the phone. She'd been fine. Happy. Making plans to visit him in Columbus the following week. And now she was gone. The next week was a blur of funeral planning, family gatherings, and profound grief. Brian took a week off from medical school. His professors were understanding and supportive. The funeral was held on March 28 at a small church in Pickerington. Hundreds of people attended. Renee had been beloved in the community, kind, generous, always willing to help a neighbor. Brian gave a eulogy, struggling to maintain his composure. "My mom she was the best person I knew," Brian said, his voice breaking. "She believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. She supported every dream I ever had. She loved unconditionally. And I don't know how to do this without her." By the time Brian finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the church. After the funeral, Brian returned to Columbus to finish the semester. He had just 2 months left until summer break. Exams were coming up. Clinical rotations needed to be completed. Medical school doesn't stop for grief. Friends noticed Brian was different after his mother's death. Quieter. More withdrawn. Drinking more than usual. Brian had always been social, fun to be around, a classmate said. After his mom died, he seemed distant. Like he was going through the motions. But Brian was trying to push through. He had something to look forward to, a vacation with Alexis. They'd been planning a spring break trip to Miami for months. It was supposed to be a celebration, Brian finishing his second year, Alexis wrapping up her nursing clinicals. A week on the beach, away from the stress and grief. The trip was scheduled for April 3rd through April 10th. Just over a week after Renee's funeral. Brian really needed that trip, Alexis later said. He'd been through so much. I think he saw Miami as a chance to reset, to process everything that had happened. Brian talked about the trip constantly in the days leading up to April 1st. He was excited about the beach, about warm weather, about getting away from Columbus for a while. He bought new swim trunks. He made restaurant reservations. He planned activities. Just a few more days, he told friends. Just gotta make it through the weekend, and then we're out of here. On Friday, March 31st, Brian attended classes as usual. He seemed relatively normal according to classmates. Tired, maybe a bit stressed about upcoming exams, but nothing alarming. That evening, Brian had dinner with Alexis at her apartment. They talked about their trip, confirmed their flight times, discussed what to pack. Brian seemed really excited, Alexis recalled. He was looking forward to it. I remember him saying, I just want to lie on a beach and not think about anything for a week. That's all he wanted. They made plans for Saturday night, April 1st. A group of friends was going bar hopping in the Arena District, Columbus's entertainment hub. Alexis wasn't feeling well, she had a cold coming on and wanted to rest before their trip. Go out with your friends, Alexis told Brian. Have fun. I'll see you tomorrow morning and we can pack together. Brian agreed. He kissed her goodbye around 8:30 p.m. Love you, he said. See you tomorrow. Love you too, Alexis replied. It was the last time she would ever see Brian Shaffer. Saturday, April 1st, 2006. April Fool's Day. This date would later fuel speculation that Brian had staged an elaborate disappearance as some kind of prank. But nothing about what happened that night suggests a joke. Brian's plans for the evening were straightforward: meet up with his friend William, Clint, Florence and Clint's girlfriend, Meredith Reed, for a night out. The plan was to hit several bars in the Arena District, have some drinks, listen to music, and blow off steam before Brian's trip to Miami. Nothing Brian hadn't done dozens of times before. The Arena District is located in downtown Columbus, near Nationwide Arena where the Columbus Blue Jackets play hockey. It's a cluster of bars, restaurants, and entertainment venues packed with college students, young professionals, and sports fans on weekend nights. The main strip runs along High Street and surrounding blocks. On a Saturday night in early April, especially during Ohio State's spring break, the area would be packed. Thousands of people moving from bar to bar, drinking, socializing, enjoying the beginning of spring. Brian met Clint and Meredith around 8:45 p.m. at the Ugly Tuna Saloona, their first stop of the night. The Ugly Tuna Saloona, often called simply the Ugly Tuna, was a popular college bar located on the second floor of a building at 1546 North High Street. The building itself was part of a small complex called the Gateway Film Center area, though the movie theater component wasn't directly connected. The first floor of 1546 North High housed a restaurant called Wendy's and some retail space. To access the Ugly Tuna, you had to enter through glass doors on High Street, walk through a small lobby, and take an escalator up to the second floor. Once you reached the top of the escalator, you walked directly into the bar. This is crucial to understand. The Ugly Tuna essentially had one main entrance/exit. The escalator up, the escalator down. Everyone coming or going used the same route. And that route was covered by security cameras. Camera 1 was positioned at street level, capturing people entering the building. Camera 2 was at the bottom of the escalator, capturing people riding up. Camera 3 was at the top of the escalator, capturing people entering the bar. Camera 4 was inside the bar near the entrance, with a wide view of the main floor. Camera 5 was positioned to capture people leaving, riding the escalator back down. There was technically a service exit at the back of the bar, a door used by employees to access a service corridor. This corridor led to a back stairwell, which eventually connected to a rear exit of the building. But this service door was supposed to be alarmed. Opening it would trigger a loud alert, ensuring bar staff knew if anyone tried to use it. More on this later. For now, understand that under normal circumstances, everyone entering and leaving the Ugly Tuna used the main escalator entrance, all captured on camera. Brian, Clint, and Meredith are clearly visible on security footage entering the bar at 9 p.m. Brian is wearing a white button-down shirt with a distinctive embroidered pattern on the left chest, small geometric designs that would later help investigators identify him in footage. He's also wearing light-colored khaki pants, white sneakers, and a gray baseball cap worn backward. He's carrying just his cell phone, wallet, and keys, no bag, no jacket. In the footage, Brian looks relaxed. He's smiling, chatting with Clint and Meredith as they ride the escalator up. There's no indication of distress, fear, or unusual behavior. Just three friends starting a Saturday night out. The Ugly Tuna that night was moderately crowded. Not shoulder-to-shoulder packed, but busy enough that you'd need to raise your voice to be heard. It was the weekend after Ohio State spring break started, so there was a decent crowd of students celebrating the beginning of their week off. The bar's layout was relatively simple. A long bar counter ran along one wall, where bartenders served drinks. High-top tables and booths filled most of the floor space. A small stage area occasionally featured live music or DJs, though on this particular night it was just regular bar music playing through speakers. Bathrooms were located near the back of the space, past the main floor area. The service door, that crucial back exit, was in the same general area as the bathrooms, but not immediately visible from the main floor. For the next several hours, Brian, Clint, and Meredith hung out at the Ugly Tuna. They grabbed a high-top table near the bar. They ordered drinks, beer mostly, maybe a shot or two. Security footage captures Brian at various points throughout the night. 9:15 p.m., Brian is at the bar, ordering drinks. He's chatting with the bartender, appears to be in good spirits. 9:47 p.m., Brian is back at the high-top table with Clint and Meredith. They're all talking, laughing at something. 10:33 p.m., Brian is walking through the bar, weaving between other patrons. He appears to be heading toward the bathroom area. 11:02 p.m., Brian is back at the bar, leaning against it, talking to someone off camera, likely another patron or possibly one of the bartenders. 11:54 p.m., Brian is at the table with Clint and Meredith again. Clint appears to be showing Brian something on his phone. 12:41 a.m., Brian is dancing near the stage area. A group of people are dancing together, and Brian is part of the group, looking like he's having a good time. 1:15 a.m., Brian is at the bar again, appearing to order another round of drinks. In all of this footage, Brian appears normal. He's not stumbling or falling down drunk. He's not getting into arguments or altercations. He's not displaying any concerning behavior. Just a 27-year-old guy out with friends on a Saturday night, having a few drinks, enjoying himself. According to Clint's later testimony, Brian had probably consumed 4 to 5 beers and maybe 2 shots over the course of the evening. He was buzzed, for sure, Clint said. But not wasted. He was coherent, walking fine, talking normally. Just relaxed and having a good time. Around 1:30 a.m., the group decided it was time to move on to another bar. They'd been at the Ugly Tuna for over 4 hours. The plan was to hit 1 or 2 more spots before calling it a night. Clint and Meredith finished their drinks and started heading toward the exit. Brian said he wanted to finish his beer and would meet them in a minute. This is where the timeline gets crucial. At 1:55 a.m., security camera footage captures what would become the last known video of Brian Shaffer. Brian is standing near the entrance area of the bar, close to the escalators. He's talking to 2 young women. The footage shows this interaction clearly. Brian approaches the women, who are standing together near the entrance, apparently getting ready to leave. He says something to them. We can't hear audio, but he's clearly initiating conversation. The women turn toward him, smiling. One of them laughs at something Brian says. They talk for approximately 2 minutes. Brian is animated, gesturing with his hands, leaning in to be heard over the bar noise. The interaction appears friendly, casual, typical bar conversation. One of the women shakes her head and says something. Brian nods, smiles, says something else. Then, at 1:57 a.m., Brian turns away from the women. He takes a few steps toward the back of the bar, in the direction of the bathrooms and the service corridor. And then, he's gone. Off camera. That's the last time Brian Shaffer is ever seen on camera. The 2 women continue talking to each other for a moment, then head toward the escalator and leave the bar. They appear on the exit camera at 1:58 a.m., riding the escalator down. Meanwhile, Clint and Meredith have already left. They're visible on security footage exiting the bar at 1:56 a.m., just before Brian's final appearance on camera. They reach the bottom of the escalator at 1:57 a.m. They stand outside the building entrance, waiting for Brian. 1 minute passes. 2 minutes. 5 minutes. Clint tries calling Brian's cell phone. According to cell phone records, Clint placed a call to Brian at 2:01 a.m. The call connected, meaning Brian's phone was on and had signal. But Brian didn't answer. The call went to voicemail after several rings. Clint and Meredith wait a bit longer. Maybe Brian went to the bathroom. Maybe he stopped to talk to someone. Maybe he got caught up in conversation. At 2:08 a.m., according to later testimony, Clint and Meredith make a decision. They assume Brian must have gone back into the bar for some reason, maybe to use the bathroom one more time or to get another drink. They figure he'll catch up with them at the next bar. So they leave, heading 2 blocks down High Street to their next destination, a bar called Brothers Bar and Grill. This decision, to leave without Brian, would haunt Clint Florence for the rest of his life. Clint and Meredith arrive at Brothers at 2:15 a.m. Security footage from Brothers confirms they entered at this time. They order drinks and wait for Brian to show up. 2:20 a.m. No Brian. 2:30 a.m. No Brian. Clint tries calling again at 2:33 a.m. This time, the call goes straight to voicemail. Brian's phone is now either off or dead. By 2:45 a.m., Clint is starting to worry. This isn't like Brian, he tells Meredith. He would have called or texted by now. Clint tries calling 3 more times between 2:45 a.m. and 3 a.m. All calls go straight to voicemail. At 3:15 a.m., Clint and Meredith decide to leave Brothers and walk back to the Ugly Tuna. Maybe Brian is still there. Maybe he got too drunk and is sitting outside. Maybe his phone died and he's waiting for them. They arrive back at the Ugly Tuna around 3:20 a.m. The bar is closed now. It closed at 2:30 a.m., and the last patrons have left. Staff are inside cleaning up, but the doors are locked. Clint bangs on the door, trying to get someone's attention. A bouncer comes to the door. "We're closed," the bouncer says. "My friend was here earlier. We lost track of him. Is he still inside? Can you check?" The bouncer looks skeptical but agrees to check. He goes back inside, does a quick walkthrough of the bar. He returns a few minutes later. "Nobody's in here except staff. Your friend left already. Are you sure? Can I come in and look?" "Dude, I just checked. He's not here. Maybe he went home." The bouncer closes the door. Clint and Meredith stand on High Street, uncertain what to do. At 3:30 a.m., Clint calls Alexis. Alexis has been asleep and answers groggily. "Hello? Alexis, hey, it's Clint. Sorry to wake you. Is Brian there?" "What? No. He's with you. Why are you calling?" We lost track of him at the bar. I thought maybe he went home." Alexis is suddenly wide awake. "What do you mean you lost track of him?" "We were leaving the Ugly Tuna, and Brian was supposed to meet us outside. But he never came out. I've been calling him but his phone is off." "What? Clint, where is he?" "I don't know. I thought he might be with you." Alexis feels a knot forming in her stomach. Brian wouldn't just disappear. Something's wrong. I'm sure he's fine. Maybe he met some friends and went somewhere else. Or maybe he just went home and his phone died. But Alexis isn't reassured. Brian always called if plans changed. Always. And Brian was supposed to meet her tomorrow morning to pack for Miami. He wouldn't just vanish without telling her. She tries calling Brian herself. Straight to voicemail. She texts him, "Where are you? Everyone is worried. Please call me." No response. By 4 a.m., multiple people are trying to reach Brian. Clint. Meredith. Alexis. A few other friends who'd heard what was going on. All calls go straight to voicemail. All texts go unanswered. At 5 a.m., Alexis makes a decision. She calls Randy Shaffer, Brian's father. Randy is asleep and answers on the 5th ring. "Hello? Randy, it's Alexis. I'm sorry to call so early, but Brian is missing." Randy is suddenly alert. "What?" "He went out with Clint last night. They lost track of him at a bar around 2 a.m. No one's heard from him since. His phone is off." Randy's mind is racing. This isn't like Brian. Not at all. Where was he? The Ugly Tuna Saloon. In the Arena District. I'm getting in my car right now. Meet me there. By 5:30 a.m., Randy, Alexis, and Clint are all back at the Ugly Tuna Saloon. The bar is dark, closed up tight. They walk around the building, checking alleys, looking for any sign of Brian. Nothing. They check nearby parking garages, thinking maybe Brian went to his car. Brian's car isn't in any nearby garage. They later learn it's parked at his apartment. Brian had taken a cab to meet Clint and Meredith. They ask homeless individuals in the area if they've seen Brian. They show his photo on their phones. No one has seen him. As the sun rises over Columbus on Sunday, April 2nd, Brian Shaffer has been missing for over 3 hours. And no one has any idea where he is. At 6:15 a.m. on Sunday, April 2nd, Randy Shaffer walks into the Columbus Police Department's downtown precinct. He approaches the desk sergeant, his voice steady but urgent. "I need to report a missing person. My son. He disappeared last night from a bar." The desk sergeant, a veteran officer named Thompson, looks up from his paperwork. "How long has he been missing, sir?" "Since around 2 a.m. Over 4 hours now." Sergeant Thompson's expression shows what he's thinking. 4 hours isn't very long, especially for a young person out drinking on a Saturday night. "How old is your son?" 27. "He's a medical student at Ohio State." "And he was out drinking?" "Yes, with friends. They lost track of him." Sergeant Thompson pulls out a missing person report form. "Sir, I'll take the report, but I have to be honest with you. Young men who've been drinking often lose track of time. They meet friends, they crash at someone's house, their phone dies. He'll probably turn up within a few hours, embarrassed and hung over." Randy's jaw tightens. "My son's mother just died 3 weeks ago. We have a trip planned for tomorrow. He would not just disappear without calling someone. Something is wrong." The seriousness in Randy's voice cuts through Thompson's skepticism. "Okay, sir. Let's get this information down." Randy provides all the details. Full name: Brian Randall Shaffer. Age: 27. Height: 6 feet 2 inches. Weight: 180 pounds. Hair: brown. Eyes: hazel. Last seen: Ugly Tuna Saloon, 1546 North High Street, approximately 1:55 a.m. Wearing white button-down shirt with embroidery, khaki pants, white sneakers, gray baseball cap. Distinctive features: small scar above right eyebrow from childhood accident. Thompson takes down the information and assures Randy that patrol officers will be notified to keep an eye out. But there's an unspoken understanding: the police aren't going to launch a full-scale search operation for an adult man who's been missing for 4 hours after a night of drinking. Randy leaves the police station frustrated but not deterred. If the police won't take this seriously yet, he'll handle it himself. By 7 a.m., Randy has mobilized a search team. He calls Derek, Brian's brother. He calls Brian's closest friends from medical school. He calls Alexis's roommates. "Brian is missing. Meet me at the Arena District. Bring anyone you can." By 8 a.m., approximately 15 people have gathered on High Street near the Ugly Tuna. Randy divides them into teams. Team 1, walk the Arena District, checking alleys, parking garages, doorways. Look for any sign of Brian. Team 2, talk to homeless individuals, early morning workers, anyone who might have been in the area between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. Team 3, check nearby hospitals. Maybe Brian was in an accident and is unconscious, unable to identify himself. Team 4, start making phone calls, to other friends, to bars Brian might have gone to taxi companies. Randy himself leads Team 1, walking every street and alley within a half-mile radius of the Ugly Tuna. They find nothing. No sign of Brian. No dropped wallet or phone. No evidence of a struggle or accident. It's as if Brian simply evaporated. Team 2 talks to approximately a dozen people who were in the arena district in the early morning hours. A homeless man named Marcus remembers seeing a lot of college kids leaving bars around 2 a.m., but no one matching Brian's specific description. A street vendor who parks near High Street every weekend night remembers the Ugly Tuna crowd dispersing around 2 to 2:30 a.m., but didn't notice anything unusual. A taxi driver remembers picking up fares near the Ugly Tuna, but none matching Brian's description. Team 3 calls every hospital in Columbus and surrounding areas. Ohio State University Hospital, Riverside Methodist, Mount Carmel East, Grant Medical Center. None have admitted anyone matching Brian's description. No John Does came in overnight. Team 4 makes dozens of phone calls. Has anyone heard from Brian? Did anyone see him after 2 a.m.? Does anyone have any information at all? The answer is always no. By noon on Sunday, Brian has been missing for approximately 10 hours. And despite the efforts of family and friends, there's been zero progress. No leads. No sightings. Nothing. Sunday afternoon, Randy returns to the police department. He's exhausted, running on adrenaline and fear. He asks to speak to a detective. He's directed to Detective Andre Edwards, a 48-year-old veteran investigator with the Columbus Police Department's Missing Persons Unit. Edwards has been with the department for 18 years and has worked hundreds of missing person cases. Most of them, especially those involving young adults, resolve within 48 hours. People turn up at friends' houses, or in jail for drunk and disorderly conduct, or at home with a story about losing their phone. But Edwards takes Randy's concerns seriously. He listens carefully as Randy explains the situation. My son is not the kind of person who disappears. He's responsible. He's close with his family. His mother just died. He has a vacation planned for tomorrow. Nothing about this makes sense. Edwards asks detailed questions. Does your son have any history of mental health issues? No. Depression? Anxiety? He's been sad since his mother died, but not depressed. He was looking forward to his trip to Miami. Any substance abuse issues? No. Brian drinks socially, but nothing more. No drugs. Financial problems? Gambling debts? He's a medical student, so he has student loans, but nothing unusual. No gambling. Relationship problems with his girlfriend? No. They're solid. Planning a future together. Any enemies? Anyone who might want to hurt him? Randy pauses at this question. No. Brian doesn't have enemies. Everyone likes him. Edwards makes notes throughout the conversation. He can tell Randy is genuinely concerned, and the circumstances are unusual enough to warrant attention. A responsible medical student with no history of erratic behavior doesn't typically just vanish. Mr. Shaffer, I'm going to assign this case priority status. That means we'll start investigating immediately rather than waiting the usual 24 to 48 hours. Randy exhales with relief. Thank you. I'll need to speak with the friend he was with last night. And his girlfriend. Can you provide contact information? Randy gives Edwards phone numbers for Clint and Alexis. I'm also going to request security footage from the bar. If Brian was there, the cameras should have captured him. This is the first glimmer of hope Randy has felt all day. If the cameras caught Brian, they'll know exactly what happened, exactly when he left, exactly which direction he went. Edwards makes calls immediately. First, to the Ugly Tuna Saloon's management. He reaches a manager named Robert Kelso, who expresses concern about Brian's disappearance. Yes, of course we'll cooperate fully. Our security system records everything. I can have footage ready for you this afternoon. I need footage from last night, approximately 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. No problem. Come by any time after 3 p.m. and I'll have it ready. Second, Edwards calls Clint Florence. Clint answers on the first ring. He's been waiting for this call. Mr. Florence, this is Detective Andre Edwards with Columbus Police. I understand you were with Brian Shaffer last night when he disappeared? Yes, sir. I've been trying to figure out what happened. I feel terrible about this. I need you to come to the station this afternoon and give a formal statement. Can you be here by 4 p.m.? Absolutely. I'll be there. Third, Edwards calls Alexis. She's been crying, her voice raw. Is there any news? Have you found him? Not yet, Ms. Wagoner. But we're actively investigating. I need to ask you some questions about Brian. Can you come to the station today? Yes. Anytime. I'll come right now if you need me. 4 p.m. would be perfect. Edward spends the rest of Sunday afternoon gathering information. He pulls Brian's DMV records, confirming his physical description and getting his driver's license photo. He checks criminal databases. Brian has no criminal record, not even a traffic ticket. He checks hospital and morgue databases statewide. No John does matching Brian's description. He contacts Ohio State University Medical School and confirms that Brian is a student in good standing, no disciplinary issues, well regarded by faculty and peers. Every piece of information paints the same picture. Brian Shaffer is a responsible, well-adjusted young man with no apparent reason to disappear. At 3 p.m., Edwards drives to the Ugly Tuna Saloon to collect the security footage. The bar is open for business, it's Sunday afternoon, and a few early patrons are watching sports on the bar's television screens. Manager Robert Kelso meets Edwards at the entrance and leads him to a small office in the back. I pulled all the footage from last night, Kelso says, gesturing to a computer screen. It's all time-stamped. The system records continuously from all 5 cameras. Edwards sits down and begins reviewing footage. At 9 p.m., he sees Brian enter the bar with 2 other people, presumably Clint and Meredith. Brian is clearly visible, white shirt with embroidery, khaki pants, gray cap worn backward. He looks relaxed, happy, talking with his friends as they ride the escalator up. Edwards fast-forwards through the evening, stopping periodically to check on Brian. 9:15 p.m., Brian at the bar, ordering drinks. 10:30 p.m., Brian at a table with friends. 12:40 a.m., Brian dancing with a group near the stage area. 1:15 a.m., Brian at the bar again. Everything looks normal. Then, at 1:55 a.m., Edwards sees the crucial moment. Brian is near the entrance, talking to 2 young women. The women are standing together, and Brian approaches them. They talk for about 2 minutes. At 1:57 a.m., Brian turns away from the women. He walks toward the back of the bar. Edwards watches the footage intently, expecting to see Brian reappear on camera moments later. But Brian never reappears. Edwards rewinds and watches again. Brian walks toward the back of the bar at 1:57 a.m. And that's the last time he's visible on any camera. Edwards's brow furrows. He fast-forwards through the next 30 minutes of footage, watching the exit camera carefully. Between 1:57 a.m. and 2:30 a.m., when the bar closed, he counts approximately 65 people leaving the bar. Every single one is clearly visible on the exit camera, riding the escalator down. But Brian Shaffer is not among them. Edwards rewinds and watches again, more carefully this time. Could Brian have left earlier, before 1:55 a.m., and then somehow re-entered? No, the entrance camera shows no one matching Brian's description leaving before 1:55 a.m. Could Brian have changed clothes somehow? Edwards studies every person leaving the bar between 1:57 a.m. and 2:30 a.m. None match Brian's height and build. None are wearing his distinctive embroidered white shirt. Could the cameras have malfunctioned? Edwards checks the footage carefully. It's continuous, no gaps, no glitches. Timestamps are consistent. Edwards leans back in his chair, baffled. Is there any other exit from the bar? He asks Kelso. Just the service door in the back. But it's alarmed. If anyone opens it, we hear a loud beeping. Did the alarm go off last night? Kelso thinks for a moment. Not that I remember. And staff would have told me if it did. Can I see this service door? Kelso leads Edwards through the bar to the back area, near the bathrooms. There's a plain door marked, Employees Only. This door leads to a service corridor, Kelso explains. We use it for deliveries and trash removal. It connects to a back stairwell. Edwards opens the door. It's unlocked during business hours. He walks through into a narrow corridor lined with boxes of liquor and bar supplies. The corridor is dimly lit and not particularly clean. At the end of the corridor is another door leading to a stairwell. Edwards walks down 2 flights of stairs. At the bottom is an exit door leading to an alley behind the building. Edwards pushes the door open and steps into the alley. It's a typical urban back alley: dumpsters, loading docks, concrete walls. Edwards looks up and spots a security camera mounted on the adjacent building, pointing down the alley. That camera doesn't belong to the Ugly Tuna, it's from the business next door. Edwards makes a note to request that footage as well. He walks back upstairs to Kelso's office. I need to ask you about the service door. You said it's alarmed? It's supposed to be. The alarm system is connected to that door. Was the alarm active last night? Kelso logs into the security system's computer interface. He pulls up the alarm log for April 1st. According to this, the alarm was armed and never triggered. Edwards makes notes. Either Brian didn't use the service exit, or the alarm malfunctioned without anyone noticing. I'm going to need copies of all this footage, Edwards says. Everything from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m., all 5 cameras. Of course. I'll burn it to DVDs for you. Give me about an hour. While waiting, Edwards walks around the building's exterior, studying sight lines and exit points. The front entrance is clearly visible from the street, busy High Street, which even at 2 a.m. would have had foot traffic. The back alley is more secluded but not completely isolated. There are a few other business back doors leading to the alley, and homeless individuals sometimes sleep in the area. Edwards makes notes about which businesses have cameras covering the alley and surrounding streets. He'll need to request footage from all of them. At 4 p.m., Edwards returns to the police station with the Ugly Tuna security footage. Clint Florence is already in the waiting area, anxious and pale. Edwards brings him to an interview room. Thank you for coming in, Mr. Florence. I know this is difficult. Have you found Brian? Clint asks immediately. Not yet. That's why I need your help. I need you to walk me through last night, minute by minute. Clint takes a deep breath and begins. He describes meeting Brian and Meredith at the Ugly Tuna around 9 p.m. They had drinks, hung out, talked about Brian's upcoming trip to Miami. Brian seemed fine, not upset, not worried, just excited about his vacation. How much did Brian drink last night? Edwards asks. 4 or 5 beers over the course of the evening. Maybe 2 shots. He was buzzed but not drunk. He was walking fine, talking normally. What happened around 1:30 a.m.? We decided to leave and go to another bar. Meredith and I headed toward the exit. Brian said he'd be right behind us. Did you actually see Brian following you? Clint hesitates. No. I assumed he was. When we got outside, we waited for him, but he never came out. How long did you wait? 5, maybe 10 minutes. I tried calling him but he didn't answer. Then what? We figured he must have gone back inside, maybe to the bathroom or something. We thought he'd meet us at the next bar. Why didn't you go back inside to check on him? Clint's face shows guilt. I don't know. I thought he was fine. I thought he'd catch up. I made a bad decision. Edwards can see Clint is genuinely distressed about this. Did Brian seem upset about anything last night? Was he arguing with anyone? No, nothing like that. He was in a good mood. Better than he'd been since his mom died. Did you see him talking to anyone unusual? Anyone who seemed suspicious? No. Brian talked to a lot of people, he was friendly like that. But nothing stood out as weird. Edwards shows Clint a still image from the security footage, the 2 women Brian was talking to at 1:55 a.m. Do you recognize these women? Clint studies the image. No. I've never seen them before. Did Brian mention them? Did he say he was going to talk to them? No. Meredith and I had already left by then. Edwards makes notes. Mr. Florence, I need to ask you some difficult questions. Please don't take offense. Okay. Were you and Brian having any conflicts? Any arguments or disagreements? No. Brian was one of my best friends. We got along great. Did Brian owe you money? Did you owe him money? No. Were there any romantic complications? Any issues with girlfriends? No. Brian loved Alexis. I have my own girlfriend. No complications. Do you have any idea what might have happened to Brian? Clint's eyes well up. I've been going over it in my head constantly. I don't understand it. Brian was there 1 second, and then just gone. Edward studies Clint carefully. His body language seems genuine, distressed, confused, guilty about leaving Brian. But Edwards has learned over 18 years not to trust appearances entirely. I'm going to ask you to take a polygraph test. Would you be willing to do that? Clint hesitates for just a fraction of a second. Sure. If it helps find Brian, I'll do anything. Good. I'll arrange it for later this week. Edwards thanks Clint and sends him on his way. Next, he interviews Alexis. Alexis is composed but clearly struggling. Her eyes are red from crying, and she clutches a tissue in her hands. Ms. Wagoner, I need to ask you about your relationship with Brian. We've been together for 2 years. We love each other. We were planning a future together. Were you having any problems? No. We were solid. Happy. When was the last time you saw Brian? Friday night. We had dinner at my apartment. We talked about our trip to Miami. He was excited about it. Did Brian seem upset or worried about anything? He was still grieving his mother. But he seemed okay. He was looking forward to the trip, to getting away. Did Brian ever talk about wanting to disappear? To start over somewhere new? Alexis looks shocked. Never. Brian loved his life. He loved me, his family, medical school. Why would he want to disappear? I have to ask these questions, Ms. Wagoner. I know. But Brian wouldn't just leave. Something happened to him. Edwards asks about Brian's finances, his friends, his habits. Everything Alexis tells him confirms what everyone else has said. Brian was a responsible, well-adjusted person with no reason to vanish. Would you be willing to take a polygraph test? Edwards asks. Yes. Absolutely. Edwards arranges polygraph tests for both Clint and Alexis for the following week. By Sunday evening, Detective Edwards has built a preliminary profile of Brian Shaffer. 27 years old, medical student, good standing in school. No criminal record. No mental health history. No substance abuse issues. No financial problems beyond normal student loans. Good relationship with girlfriend. Close with family. Mother recently deceased, grieving but coping. Excited about upcoming vacation. And most importantly, last seen on security footage at 1:57 a.m., walking toward the back of the Ugly Tuna Saloon. Never seen leaving. Edwards stays at the station late into Sunday night, reviewing the security footage again and again. He watches Brian walk toward the back of the bar. He watches dozens of people leave after that. But Brian is not among them. At 11:30 p.m., Edwards finally goes home. He's exhausted but his mind is racing. How does someone disappear from a camera-covered bar with one exit? It should be impossible. But Brian Shaffer has done exactly that. Monday morning, April 3rd. The day Brian was supposed to fly to Miami. Instead, Randy Shaffer is organizing a full-scale search operation. By 7 a.m., over 50 volunteers have gathered in the Arena District. Randy has printed hundreds of flyers with Brian's photo and description. The volunteers fan out across Columbus, posting flyers on telephone poles, in business windows, on bulletin boards, walking through parks and wooded areas, checking abandoned buildings, talking to anyone who might have seen something. Randy has also contacted local media. By Monday afternoon, Brian's disappearance is the lead story on every Columbus news station. Medical student vanishes from popular bar. Family desperate for answers in missing person case. Ohio State student disappears without a trace. Brian's photo is everywhere, on television, in newspapers, on social media. Randy does an interview with WBNS 10 TV. He stands in front of the Ugly Tuna Saloon, holding one of the flyers. My son Brian disappeared from this bar early Sunday morning. If anyone saw anything, if anyone knows anything, please come forward. We just want to bring Brian home. Randy's voice breaks slightly, but he maintains composure. Brian is a good person. A kind person. He's going to be a doctor. He has his whole life ahead of him. Please, if you know anything, call the police. The interview airs on the 6 p.m. news and generates immediate response. The police tip line receives dozens of calls Monday evening. But most are well-meaning people who want to help but have no actual information. I think I saw someone who looked like Brian at a gas station. I saw a guy matching his description at the grocery store. My neighbor's cousin knows someone who might have been at that bar. Edwards and his team follow up on every lead, but none pan out. Monday night, Edwards obtains security footage from the business adjacent to the Ugly Tuna, the one with a camera covering the back alley. He reviews the footage carefully. The camera angle covers about 70% of the alley. There are blind spots along the building walls where the camera can't see. Between 1:30 a.m. and 3 a.m., Edwards sees several people in the alley. A homeless man pushing a shopping cart, approximately 1:45 a.m. Two men smoking cigarettes, approximately 2:10 a.m. A couple walking through, approximately 2:35 a.m. But no one matching Brian's description. Edwards makes a note: if Brian exited through the service door and stayed along the wall in the camera blind spot, he could have made it to the side street without being captured on video. It's possible. But it requires either incredible luck or knowledge of where the cameras were positioned. By Monday night, Brian has been missing for approximately 44 hours. The critical 48-hour window is almost closed. In missing person cases, the first 48 hours are crucial. After that, the chances of finding someone alive drop dramatically. Randy knows this. He doesn't sleep Monday night. He sits in his home office, surrounded by maps and notes, trying to figure out where his son could be. Tuesday, April 4th. Brian was supposed to return from Miami today. Instead, his case is officially categorized as a high-priority missing person investigation. Detective Edwards expands the search. All hospitals within 100 miles are notified to watch for anyone matching Brian's description. All police departments in Ohio and neighboring states receive bulletins with Brian's photo. The FBI is contacted. While they typically don't get involved in adult missing persons cases unless there's evidence of foul play or crossing state lines, they agree to monitor the case. Brian's cell phone records are subpoenaed. His bank accounts are flagged for any activity. Edwards also requests additional security footage from every business and traffic camera within a 4-block radius of the Ugly Tuna. It's tedious work, reviewing hundreds of hours of footage, but it's necessary. Somewhere in that footage might be the answer to what happened to Randy Shaffer. Tuesday afternoon, the cell phone records arrive. Edwards reviews them carefully. Brian's phone showed activity throughout Saturday night. 9:34 p.m., text message sent to Alexis, out with Clint. Having fun. Love you. 10:17 p.m., text message sent to a classmate. 11:42 p.m., incoming call from Derek, Brian's brother, duration 3 minutes. 1:52 a.m., text message sent to Alexis, see you in the morning. Love you. 2:01 a.m., incoming call from Clint, no answer, call duration 28 seconds. 2:01 a.m., phone last pinged cell tower near Arena District. After 2:01 a.m., nothing. The phone either powered off, died, or was destroyed. Edwards notes the timeline. Brian is last seen on camera at 1:57 a.m. His phone last pings at 2:01 a.m., just 4 minutes later. Whatever happened to Brian happened in that narrow window. Edwards also reviews Brian's call and text history from the weeks leading up to his disappearance. Nothing unusual. Regular calls to Alexis, his father, his brother, classmates. Text messages about school, about the Miami trip, about normal everyday things. No calls to unknown numbers. No suspicious patterns. No indication Brian was planning anything unusual. The bank records show similar normalcy. Brian had approximately $850 in his checking account as of April 1st. His last transaction was March 31st, a purchase at a bookstore for $34. No activity after that. No withdrawals. No deposits. No credit card charges. His accounts have been dormant since he disappeared. This is significant. If Brian left voluntarily, he would need money to survive. The fact that he hasn't touched his accounts strongly suggests he's either unable to access them, deceased or incapacitated, or he had access to cash we don't know about. By Tuesday evening, Detective Edwards has reviewed over 200 hours of security footage from various businesses and traffic cameras in the Arena district. He's identified every person visible on camera between 1:30 a.m. and 3 a.m. within a 4-block radius of the Ugly Tuna. He's cross-referenced these individuals with the Ugly Tuna's exit footage, accounting for everyone who left the bar. The math doesn't add up. According to the Ugly Tuna's internal cameras, approximately 85 people were in the bar when Brian was last seen at 1:57 a.m. Between 1:57 a.m. and 2:30 a.m., closing time, 65 people are seen exiting via the main escalator. That means approximately 20 people are unaccounted for. But most of those 20 are bar staff, bartenders, bouncers, servers, who left through the service exit after closing. Edwards interviews all bar staff who worked that night. None remember seeing Brian after approximately 2 a.m. None remember anyone using the service exit during business hours. None remember the alarm being triggered. It's as if Brian simply ceased to exist at 1:57 a.m. By the end of the first 48 hours, Detective Edwards has to face an uncomfortable truth. He has no idea what happened to Brian Shaffer. No body. No witnesses to foul play. No evidence of where Brian went after walking toward the back of the bar. Just a young man who vanished into thin air. As the first week of Brian's disappearance passed, the investigation expanded dramatically. Detective Edwards assembled a task force of 6 detectives dedicated solely to finding Brian. The Columbus Police Department, facing increasing media pressure and genuine concern about a medical student vanishing without explanation, committed significant resources to the case. The polygraph tests. On April 6, 4 days after Brian disappeared, Clint Florence arrived at the police station for his scheduled polygraph examination. Polygraph tests, commonly called lie detector tests, measure physiological responses like heart rate, blood pressure, respiration, and skin conductivity while the subject answers questions. The theory is that lying produces stress, which causes measurable physiological changes. However, polygraphs are controversial. They're not admissible as evidence in most courts because they're not scientifically reliable. Innocent people can fail due to nervousness. Guilty people can pass if they're calm or sociopathic. But police still use them as investigative tools. Sometimes a failed polygraph gives investigators a direction to focus on. Sometimes the act of taking a polygraph prompts someone to confess or provide new information. Clint sat in the examination room, electrodes attached to his fingers and chest, a blood pressure cuff on his arm. The examiner, a specialist named David Morrison, explained the process. "I'm going to ask you a series of questions. Some will be control questions, some will be relevant to Brian's disappearance. Just answer truthfully, yes or no. The test began. Control questions first. Is your name William Florence? Yes. Do you live in Columbus, Ohio? Yes. Are you 28 years old? Yes. Then relevant questions. Were you with Brian Shaffer on the night of April 1st? Yes. Did you leave the Ugly Tuna before Brian? Yes. Do you know what happened to Brian Shaffer? No. Did you harm Brian Shaffer? No. Did you help someone else harm Brian Shaffer? No. Are you lying about what happened that night? No. The test continued for approximately 90 minutes. Afterward, Morrison analyzed the results. When he emerged from the examination room, Detective Edwards was waiting. Well? Edwards asked. Morrison's expression was troubled. Results are inconclusive. What does that mean? It means I can't definitively say he's being truthful or deceptive. His physiological responses were inconsistent. He showed stress responses to both control questions and relevant questions. Your professional opinion, is he lying? Morrison hesitated. I can't say for certain. He's either lying, or he's so anxious and guilt-ridden about leaving Brian that night that his stress responses are overwhelming the test. Edwards thanked Morrison and called Clint back in. Mr. Florence, the results were inconclusive. I need you to take the test again. Clint looked panicked. What? Why? I told you the truth. Inconclusive doesn't mean you failed. It means we need clearer results. Will you take it again? Clint's hands were shaking. I need to talk to a lawyer. This was not the response Edwards wanted to hear. Innocent people typically don't lawyer up immediately. Mr. Florence, you're not under arrest. You're not being charged with anything. But if you refuse to cooperate further, it raises questions. Clint stood up. I've told you everything I know. I've answered all your questions. I took your polygraph. I'm done. Clint walked out of the police station. That afternoon, he retained an attorney, a criminal defense lawyer named Marcus Webb. Webb immediately advised Clint to cease all cooperation with police. No more interviews. No more polygraphs. No more statements. This decision would haunt Clint for years. In the court of public opinion, refusing to cooperate looks like guilt. But from a legal standpoint, it was probably the smart move. If Clint was innocent, which he maintained he was, continuing to submit to polygraphs and interrogations could only hurt him. One nervous response, one misinterpreted answer, and he could find himself as the prime suspect in his best friend's disappearance. The next day, April 7th, Alexis came in for her polygraph. She was terrified, not because she had anything to hide, but because the whole experience was traumatic. The test proceeded similarly to Clint's. Control questions, then relevant questions. Were you dating Brian Shaffer? Yes. Did you see Brian on April 1st? No. Do you know what happened to Brian? No. Did you harm Brian? No. Are you lying about your relationship with Brian? No. After the examination, Morrison delivered his results to Edwards. She passed. No deception indicated. Edwards wasn't surprised. Alexis had a solid alibi, she was home sick the entire night, confirmed by her roommate. She had no motive to harm Brian. And her emotional responses seemed genuine. But the fact that Clint's results were inconclusive while Alexis passed cleanly raised red flags. The service exit investigation. Edwards became increasingly focused on the service exit as the most likely explanation for how Brian left the bar unseen. On April 8, Edwards brought in a forensics team to examine the service door and corridor thoroughly. They dusted for fingerprints on the door handle, the corridor walls, the stairwell railings. They found dozens of prints, unsurprising given that employees use this route regularly. The prints were run through databases. Most matched bar employees. A few matched delivery personnel. None matched Brian Shaffer. But the absence of Brian's prints didn't necessarily mean anything. He could have used his sleeve to open the door. He could have worn gloves. His prints could have been smudged by subsequent use. The forensics team also examined the alarm system. The service door was connected to a basic alarm. When opened during armed hours, it should trigger an audible beep alerting staff. The alarm company was brought in to inspect the system. Their findings were concerning. The alarm had been malfunctioning intermittently for approximately 2 weeks before Brian's disappearance. Sometimes it would trigger properly. Sometimes it wouldn't. Bar management had scheduled a repair technician to fix it, but the appointment wasn't until April 5, 4 days after Brian vanished. This was crucial information. If the alarm wasn't working properly on April 1, someone could have used the service exit without triggering an alert. Edwards interviewed every bar employee again, asking specifically about the service door. A bartender named Lisa Chen provided interesting information. The alarm was definitely acting weird that week. Sometimes it would go off for no reason. Other times, we'd open the door and nothing would happen. We mostly just dealt with it. Did you notice if it was working or not on April 1 specifically? I don't remember opening that door during my shift that night. So I can't say for sure. If someone had opened it, would you have heard the alarm? Depends. If I was near the back, yeah. But if I was at the front of the bar where it was loud, maybe not. So it was possible, even likely, that someone could have used the service exit that night without anyone noticing. Edwards walked through the route again. From where Brian was last seen on camera, walking toward the back of the bar, to the service door, approximately 30 feet. Through the service corridor, approximately 40 feet. Down the back stairwell, 2 flights. Out the back exit to the alley, and then you're in the blind spot of the alley camera if you stay close to the wall. It's doable. But why would Brian go that way? And if he did, what happened to him in the alley? The witness canvass. Throughout the first 2 weeks of April, detectives conducted an extensive witness canvass. They interviewed over 150 people who were at or near the Ugly Tuna on the night Brian disappeared. Most had little useful information. I was there but I don't remember seeing him. It was crowded. I wasn't paying attention to specific people. I left around midnight, so I wasn't there when he disappeared. But a few witnesses provided interesting details. Witness number 1, Marcus Johnson. Marcus was a homeless man who often slept in the alley behind the Ugly Tuna. He was there the night of April 1. I saw lots of people coming and going from the bars. But I remember around 2 a.m. or so, there was a white van parked in the alley for a while. What kind of van? Like a cargo van. Plain white. No markings. Did you see anyone near the van? Nah, I kept my distance. Didn't want no trouble. How long was it there? Maybe an hour? From like 1:30 to 2:30, something like that. Edwards made extensive efforts to find this white van. He reviewed all available traffic camera footage from the area. He found several white vans on camera that night. It's a common vehicle. But he couldn't definitively identify which van Marcus had seen, or if it was even relevant to Brian's disappearance. Witness number 2, Jessica Palmer. Jessica was one of the two women Brian was talking to at 1:55 a.m. Finding these women had been a priority, and Jessica finally came forward on April 10. She brought her attorney, concerned about being implicated in something. Edwards assured her she wasn't a suspect, he just needed to know what Brian said to her. "We were getting ready to leave the bar," Jessica explained. "This guy, I now know it was Brian, came up to us and started chatting." "What did he say?" "Just typical bar conversation. Asked where we were from, what we were studying. He was friendly, maybe a little buzzed but not drunk." "Did he seem upset or agitated?" "No, he seemed fine. Normal." "What happened after you talked?" "He asked if we wanted to go to another bar with him. We said no thanks, we were heading home. He said okay, no problem, nice meeting you." Then he turned and walked away. "Which direction did he walk?" "Toward the back of the bar. I assumed he was going back to his friends or maybe to the bathroom." "Did you see where he went specifically?" "No, we left right after that. Went down the escalator and got a cab." "Did you notice anyone following Brian? Anyone watching him?" "No, nothing like that." Jessica's friend Amanda, the second woman in the video, confirmed Jessica's account almost word for word when interviewed separately. Their stories matched, they seemed credible, and they clearly had nothing to do with Brian's disappearance. They were just two young women who had a brief, meaningless conversation with Brian minutes before he vanished. Witness number 3, Derek Thompson. Derek was a bouncer at the Ugly Tuna that night, working the front entrance. He'd been interviewed briefly in the initial days but was brought back for a more detailed interview on April 12. "I check IDs at the door, keep an eye on who's coming and going. That night was pretty standard." "Do you remember Brian Shaffer coming in?" Edwards showed him Brian's photo. "Maybe. We get hundreds of people through here every weekend. I can't say for sure." "What about the service exit? Did you check it that night?" "I'm supposed to check it a few times per shift, make sure it's secure. But honestly, if we're busy, sometimes I don't get around to it." "Did you check it on April 1? "I don't remember specifically." "If someone used that exit during business hours, would you know?" "Depends if the alarm went off. But like I said, that alarm was wonky. Half the time it worked, half the time it didn't." The interviews painted a frustrating picture, lots of people around, but no one saw anything definitive. The Reintenter. M. Continuer. Media frenzy ***. By mid-April, Brian's case had become a national story. CNN ran a segment on "The Medical Student Who Vanished." NBC's Dateline contacted the family about doing a full episode. America's Most Wanted scheduled Brian's case to air on April 21. The Columbus Dispatch ran front-page stories almost daily. Local TV stations provided nightly updates. The coverage was intense, and it generated thousands of tips. The police tip line was overwhelmed. Detective Edwards assigned 2 officers just to field calls and categorize tips. Credible leads requiring immediate follow-up. Possible leads requiring investigation. Well-meaning but useless information. Obvious hoaxes or pranks. Most fell into categories 2 and 3. I think I saw Brian at a gas station in Cleveland. My psychic friend says Brian is near water. Someone matching his description was at a truck stop in Pennsylvania. Edwards and his team followed up on hundreds of these tips. Every claimed sighting was investigated. Every lead was pursued. None led anywhere. The most promising tip came on April 14. A woman called from Hilliard, Ohio, a Columbus suburb about 15 miles from the Arena District. She was absolutely certain she'd seen Brian at a grocery store. It was him. I know it was. Same face, same height. He was buying food, acting totally normal. Detectives rushed to the grocery store and pulled security footage. A man matching Brian's general description does appear on camera at the time the woman specified. But the image quality is poor. The man is wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, and his face is partially obscured. Edwards studied the footage for hours. Could be him, he told Randy. But I can't say for certain. The build is right, but I can't see his face clearly enough. Randy watched the footage over and over. I want it to be him, Randy said. But I can't tell either. They showed the footage to Alexis, to Derek, to several of Brian's friends. Everyone had the same response, maybe, but I can't be sure. The grocery store gave detectives the man's receipt. He'd paid cash, so there was no credit card to trace. They identified the items purchased: bread, lunch meat, chips, soda. About $23 worth of groceries. Detectives canvassed the area around the grocery store, showing Brian's photo to nearby residents and businesses. No one else reported seeing him. The lead went cold. Was it Brian? Or just someone who looked like him? Without a clear facial image, there was no way to know. The physical searches. While detectives pursued investigative leads, physical searches continued throughout April. Randy organized search parties every weekend. Volunteers, sometimes over 100 people, would gather to search specific areas. Week 1, April 8 to 9th, the Scioto River shoreline and Olentangy River shoreline. Searchers walked the banks for miles, looking for any sign of Brian: clothing, a wallet, a body. They found nothing. Week 2, April 15 to 16th, wooded areas and parks within a 5-mile radius of the Arena District. Teams walked through brush and undergrowth with rakes and sticks, checking for any disturbance that might indicate something buried. Nothing. Week 3, April 22 to 23, abandoned buildings in downtown Columbus. With permission from property owners, search teams entered vacant warehouses, old factories, and condemned structures. Nothing. Week 4, April 29 to 30th, expanded the search to outlying areas, rural roads, farmland, state parks. Nothing. Columbus police also conducted their own specialized searches. Cadaver dogs were brought in to check the Ugly Tuna building, the alley behind it, and surrounding areas. The dogs showed no interest, no indication of human remains. Dive teams searched sections of the Scioto and Olentangy rivers. The rivers were murky and full of debris, making underwater searches difficult. Divers found shopping carts, bicycles, tires, and other trash. No body. No clothing. No evidence related to Brian. A helicopter equipped with thermal imaging flew over Columbus and surrounding areas, looking for heat signatures that might indicate a body. Nothing. By the end of April, despite thousands of volunteer hours and extensive professional searches, Brian Shaffer remained missing without a trace. Randy's deterioration. The stress was taking a severe toll on Randy Shaffer. In the span of 3 weeks, he'd lost his wife and his son. He was running on adrenaline, caffeine, and determination. He barely slept, maybe 2 to 3 hours per night. He barely ate, friends had to force food on him. He'd lost over 15 pounds since April 2nd. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. "Dad, you need to take care of yourself," Derek told him during one of their daily phone calls. "You're going to collapse." "I can't stop," Randy said. "Every minute I'm not searching is a minute Brian might be suffering somewhere, waiting for me to find him. The police are searching. Volunteers are searching. You don't have to do this alone." "Yes, I do. He's my son." Derek was worried about his father, but he also understood. Randy had lost his wife. He couldn't lose his son too. The search was the only thing keeping Randy going. If he stopped, if he admitted defeat, what did he have left? The 1-month mark. On May 2nd, exactly 1 month after Brian disappeared, Randy held a press conference. He stood in front of the Ugly Tuna Saloon, surrounded by media cameras and reporters. "It's been 1 month since my son Brian vanished," Randy said, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. 1 month of searching. 1 month of hoping. 1 month of not knowing. Randy held up a poster with Brian's photo. "Brian is not just a missing person. He's my son. He's someone's boyfriend. He's a medical student who wants to help people. He's a real person with a real life, and he deserves to be found." Randy announced an increased reward, $50,000 for information leading to Brian's whereabouts. "If someone knows something, if someone saw something, this is your chance to do the right thing. Please. Help us bring Brian home." The press conference was covered extensively. That night, the tip line received another surge of calls. But once again, nothing credible emerged. As May progressed, a grim reality began to set in. Unless new evidence emerged, unless someone came forward with information, Brian Shaffer might never be found. As weeks turned into months with no sign of Brian, various theories about his disappearance began to solidify. Law enforcement, family members, and the public all had different ideas about what happened that night. Let's examine each theory in detail. Theory 1, the accident theory. Some investigators believed Brian's disappearance might have been accidental. According to this theory, Brian, slightly intoxicated, left the Ugly Tuna through the service exit, either intentionally or by getting lost looking for the bathroom. He made his way down the back stairs and out into the alley. Disoriented in an unfamiliar area at 2 a.m., he wandered away from the arena district. Perhaps he was trying to walk home. Perhaps he was confused. He encountered an accident, fell into the river, fell into a construction site, was hit by a car in an area without cameras. His body ended up somewhere it hasn't yet been found. Evidence supporting this theory. Brian had been drinking, which could impair judgment. The service exit was accessible, even if not obvious. Accidents happen to intoxicated people all the time. This explains the lack of evidence of foul play. Problems with this theory. Brian wasn't extremely drunk, witnesses say he was buzzed but coherent. His phone stopped working at 2:01 a.m., just minutes after leaving the bar, suggesting something sudden happened. Extensive searches of the rivers and surrounding areas found nothing. There's no evidence of an accident, no body, no clothing, no belongings. Brian was familiar with the Arena district. It's unlikely he'd get dangerously lost. Detective Edwards gave this theory about 20% probability. Theory 2, the voluntary disappearance theory. This theory suggests Brian staged his own disappearance. According to this scenario, Brian, overwhelmed by his mother's death and the pressures of medical school, decided he couldn't continue with his life. On the night of April 1st, he used the service exit to leave the bar without being seen on camera. He had secretly saved cash that police don't know about. He hitchhiked or got a ride out of Columbus. He's now living somewhere under a new identity, working cash jobs, staying off the grid. Evidence supporting this theory. People do voluntarily disappear, especially after traumatic events. Brian's mother had just died, he was grieving. Medical school is extremely stressful. The deliberate use of the service exit, if that's what happened, suggests planning. No body has been found, which could mean he's alive. Problems with this theory. Brian has never accessed his bank accounts, $850 remains untouched. His social security number has never been used. He's never been arrested, which would reveal his identity. Brian was excited about his Miami trip. Why disappear 2 days before? His personality doesn't fit someone who would abandon family. Living off-grid for 19 years is extremely difficult. The timing doesn't make sense. Why stage a disappearance at a crowded bar where you're on camera? Randy Shaffer desperately wanted this theory to be true because it meant Brian was alive. But even Randy acknowledged the evidence didn't really support it. Detective Edwards gave this theory about 15% probability. Theory 3, the foul play by stranger theory. This theory proposes that Brian was killed by someone he didn't know. The scenario. Brian left the Ugly Tuna through the service exit, either voluntarily or lured by someone. In the alley or nearby, he encountered someone with violent intentions, a robber, a serial predator, or a random attacker. Brian was killed and his body was disposed of somewhere it hasn't been found. Evidence supporting this theory. It explains why Brian has never been found alive. It explains the sudden cessation of all activity, phone, bank accounts. Stranger killings do happen, especially in urban areas at night. It explains why no one Brian knew seems to be responsible. Problems with this theory. There's no evidence of violence, no blood, no signs of struggle. Why would a stranger specifically target Brian? How did the killer dispose of the body so completely? The timing is very tight. Brian was last on camera at 1:57 a.m., and Clint called him at 2:01 a.m. That's only 4 minutes for a stranger to encounter Brian, kill him, and begin disposing of the body. Detective Edwards initially gave this theory about 35% probability, though it would increase over time. Theory 4, the foul play by acquaintance theory. This is perhaps the most disturbing theory, that Brian was killed by someone he knew. The primary focus of this theory, Clint Florence. The scenario. Clint and Brian had an argument or conflict that night, perhaps over something minor that escalated. Or perhaps there was pre-existing tension between them that others didn't know about. After Meredith left, Clint returned to the bar. He and Brian went out the service exit to talk or argue privately. The situation escalated. Perhaps Clint pushed Brian, and Brian hit his head. Perhaps there was a fight. Brian was killed, maybe intentionally, maybe accidentally. Clint panicked and disposed of Brian's body somewhere it wouldn't be found. Then he played innocent, pretending he didn't know what happened. Evidence supporting this theory. Clint was the last person with Brian. Clint's polygraph results were inconclusive. Clint immediately lawyered up and stopped cooperating with police. Clint had opportunity, he could have returned to the bar. Most murders are committed by someone the victim knows. Clint knew the area, knew where cameras were, could have planned disposal. Problems with this theory. Clint is visible on camera leaving the bar before Brian disappears. He's visible on camera arriving at the next bar by 2:15 a.m. The timeline is very tight for him to have come back, killed Brian, and disposed of the body. There's no clear motive. Clint and Brian were longtime friends. Meredith was with Clint most of the night and didn't notice anything unusual. There's zero physical evidence linking Clint to foul play. Despite the problems, this theory gained significant traction, especially online. Detective Edwards gave it about 20% probability officially, though he investigated Clint extensively. Theory 5, the still-in-the-building theory. A smaller subset of investigators believed Brian might never have left the building at all. The scenario. Brian suffered a medical emergency, a heart attack, a seizure, an aneurysm, and collapsed in a hidden area of the building. His body is still there, in a space that wasn't searched or was overlooked. Or Brian was killed inside the building, intentionally or accidentally, and his body was concealed there. Evidence supporting this theory. It explains why Brian was never seen leaving. Medical emergencies do happen, especially to people who've been drinking. Large buildings have hidden spaces, behind walls, in ventilation systems, in sealed-off areas. Problems with this theory. The building was searched thoroughly multiple times. Cadaver dogs showed no interest. Months have passed. If a body were in the building, the smell would be overwhelming. This doesn't explain Brian's phone stopping at 2:01 a.m. If he had a medical emergency inside the bar, his phone would likely have stopped working inside the building, still pinging the same cell tower. Detective Edwards gave this theory less than 5% probability after the exhaustive building searches. Theory 6, the underground construction theory. One particularly specific theory emerged from construction workers familiar with downtown Columbus. The scenario. The area around the Ugly Tuna was undergoing significant development in 2006. There were construction sites, excavations, and underground work happening. Brian somehow ended up in an active construction site, either by accident or by being placed there after death. His body was buried by construction activity or sealed into a foundation or structure. Evidence supporting this theory. Construction sites are chaotic and not always well monitored at night. Bodies have been accidentally entombed in construction before. This would explain why searches haven't found Brian. The service corridor led toward an area with construction activity. Problems with this theory. Construction sites in the immediate area were checked. Most major construction projects have some documentation of what was built when. Someone would likely have noticed a body before it was sealed in. This still doesn't explain how Brian got to a construction site. This theory was popular in online forums, but law enforcement gave it low probability. The most likely explanation. By June 2006, Detective Edwards had formed his own working theory, though he kept it mostly to himself. Brian left the Ugly Tuna through the service exit sometime shortly after 1:57 a.m. Either voluntarily, perhaps going outside for air, or looking for a different bathroom, or lured by someone. He exited into the alley, possibly staying in the camera blind spot. He encountered foul play, either a stranger with violent intentions or someone he knew who had bad motives. He was killed quickly, which explains the short time frame. His body was transported in a vehicle, possibly the white van Marcus saw, to a location outside the immediate search area. The body was disposed of in a way that has prevented discovery, buried in a remote location, submerged in water far from Columbus, or concealed in a way searchers haven't anticipated. The killer, whoever it was, got lucky. The malfunctioning alarm. The camera blind spots. The timing. Or the killer knew the area well and planned this. Either way, they've gotten away with it for 19 years. Edwards estimated this scenario at about 40% probability, not certain, but the most logical explanation given the evidence. But 40% is far from definitive. And that's the frustrating reality of Brian Shaffer's case. Even the most experienced investigators can't say with certainty what happened. Too many variables. Too little physical evidence. Too many unanswered questions. 48:00-58:00, The Long Search. Narrator. As 2006 progressed, the intensity of the search for Brian Shaffer gradually decreased. Not because people stopped caring, but because the leads dried up. There were only so many times you could search the same areas. Only so many people you could interview. Only so many tips you could chase before they all started sounding the same. But Randy Shaffer never stopped. Summer 2006. In June, Randy organized a massive poster campaign. He printed 10,000 flyers with Brian's photo and distributed them across Ohio, Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Toledo, Dayton, Akron. Every major city in the state had Brian's face on telephone poles, in shop windows, on community bulletin boards. Randy also expanded the search to neighboring states. He drove to Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Kentucky, Indiana, and Michigan. In each state, he contacted local police departments, provided Brian's information, and asked them to watch for any signs of him. He visited homeless shelters, showing Brian's photo to staff and residents. "Have you seen this man? He's been missing since April." Most people were sympathetic but had no information. Some homeless individuals claimed to have seen Brian, but when Randy followed up, the sightings always fell apart. Mistaken identity. Wishful thinking. Sometimes people just wanted to help and convinced themselves they'd seen something they hadn't. In July, Randy hired a private investigator. The PI, a former police detective named Robert Hayes, reviewed all the case files and conducted his own investigation. He interviewed witnesses police had already talked to. He reviewed security footage police had already reviewed. He searched areas police had already searched. After 2 months and $15,000 in fees, Hayes reached the same conclusion as police. Brian left the bar somehow and disappeared. Without new evidence, there's nowhere else to look. Randy was disappointed but not deterred. In August, Randy made a difficult decision. He needed to return to work, at least part-time. His contracting business had been on hold since April, and his finances were suffering. He'd spent tens of thousands of dollars on private investigators, flyers, travel, and the reward fund. His savings were dwindling. Randy started taking small jobs again, enough to keep money coming in, but not so much that it interfered with his search for Brian. Every penny he earned went into 2 categories: living expenses and finding Brian. Fall 2006. September marked 5 months since Brian's disappearance. Ohio State University started a new academic year. Brian's medical school class continued without him. His classmates moved on to their third year, beginning clinical rotations. Brian would have been with them. Instead, his seat in lectures remained empty, a constant reminder to his classmates of their missing friend. The medical school held a memorial service for Brian on September 15th. Not a funeral, because there was no body, no confirmation of death, but a gathering to honor him and show support for his family. Over 200 people attended. Classmates, professors, friends from undergraduate, hospital staff who'd worked with Brian. Alexis gave a tearful speech. Brian wanted to be a doctor so he could help people. That's all he ever talked about. He had so much compassion, so much potential. We were supposed to have a life together. Instead, I have questions that may never be answered. Randy struggled to maintain composure during the service. Seeing all these people who loved Brian, hearing stories about what a good person he was, it reinforced both how much Brian mattered and how unbearable his absence was. In October, Randy made another media push. He contacted every major news outlet he could think of. Dateline NBC aired a full episode about Brian's disappearance on October 13th. The episode was thorough, covering the timeline, the theories, and the family's ongoing search. It generated another wave of tips, hundreds of calls in the days following the broadcast. But once again, none led anywhere concrete. November brought another difficult milestone, Thanksgiving. The first major holiday without Renee. The first Thanksgiving without Brian. Randy and Derek spent the day together, along with some extended family. But the absences were overwhelming. 2 empty chairs at the table. Randy barely ate. He spent most of the day looking at photos of Brian, remembering Thanksgivings past. Next year, Randy said quietly. Next year Brian will be home. Derek didn't have the heart to voice his growing doubt. Winter 2006 to 2007. December marked 8 months since Brian disappeared. The holiday season was brutal for the Shaffer family. Christmas without Renee. Christmas without Brian. Randy put up a Christmas tree because Renee always loved Christmas. But he couldn't bring himself to decorate it fully. He placed one gift under the tree, a wrapped present with a tag that read, Brian. For when he comes home, Randy explained to Derek. Derek found this heartbreaking but didn't say anything. On December 26, 9 months to the day since Brian disappeared, Randy returned to the Ugly Tuna. He stood outside the building, holding a photo of Brian, as if proximity to the last place Brian was seen might somehow provide answers. Where did you go? Randy whispered. Where are you? Passers-by stared, some recognizing Randy from news coverage. A few approached to offer support or share that they were praying for Brian's return. Randy appreciated the kindness but found it hollow. Prayers hadn't brought Brian home. January 2007 marked a full year since Renee's death. Randy visited her grave for the first time since her funeral. He'd been unable to go before, too consumed with searching for Brian. But now, standing at his wife's gravestone, Randy broke down. I'm sorry, he said through tears. I'm sorry I haven't been here. I'm sorry I haven't found him yet. But I will. I promise you, Renee, I'll find our boy. Randy sat by the grave for over an hour, talking to his late wife, updating her on the search, asking for strength to continue. Spring 2007. April 2, 2007, 1 year since Brian disappeared. Randy organized a memorial walk and candlelight vigil. The walk started at the Ugly Tuna Saloon and proceeded through the Arena District, ending at a nearby park. Approximately 300 people participated. Friends, family, classmates, community members who'd never met Brian but were moved by his story. They carried candles and wore t-shirts with Brian's photo and the words, "Find Brian Shaffer." At the park, Randy gave a speech. "1 year ago today, my son Brian vanished without a trace. 365 days of searching. 365 days of questions. 365 days of hoping and praying for answers." Randy's voice cracked, but he continued. "I want to thank everyone who's helped search for Brian. Everyone who's shared his photo, called in tips, kept him in their thoughts. Your support means more than you know." Randy paused, looking at the crowd of flickering candles in the darkness. "To whoever knows what happened to Brian, it's not too late to come forward. It's never too late to do the right thing. Please help us bring him home." The vigil received media coverage, generating another small spike in tips. But as had become the pattern, nothing substantial emerged. The second year. As 2007 progressed, the public's attention gradually shifted to other cases, other news stories. Brian's disappearance, once front-page news, moved to occasional updates on slow news days. The police investigation, while officially still open, slowed considerably. Detective Edwards continued working Brian's case, but he had other cases demanding his attention. Without new evidence, there was only so much he could do. He still followed up on tips. He still looked for patterns in other cases that might connect to Brian's disappearance. But the active, intensive phase of the investigation was over. Randy understood this, though it frustrated him. "They've given up," he told Derek. "They haven't given up," Derek replied. "They just don't have anywhere else to look." "Then I'll look. I'll search every inch of this state if I have to." And Randy did. Throughout 2007 and 2008, Randy continued his personal search. He spent every weekend driving to different parts of Ohio, showing Brian's photo, asking questions. He visited rural areas, state parks, truck stops, rest areas. He talked to gas station attendants, waitresses, motel clerks. "Have you seen this man?" The answer was always no. Randy also became active in missing persons advocacy. He connected with other families searching for missing loved ones. He learned about search techniques, about dealing with law enforcement, about managing media attention. He joined organizations like the National Center for Missing Adults and the Doe Network. He helped other families navigate the nightmare he was living. It gave him purpose beyond just searching for Brian. But Brian was always the priority. The psychological toll. By 2009, 3 years after Brian's disappearance, Randy was showing serious signs of psychological and physical decline. His doctor diagnosed him with depression and anxiety disorder. He prescribed medication, which Randy took sporadically. "The medication makes me foggy," Randy complained. "I need to stay sharp to find Brian." Randy also suffered from insomnia. He averaged 3 to 4 hours of sleep per night. When he did sleep, he had nightmares. Dreams of finding Brian's body. Dreams of Brian calling for help while Randy couldn't reach him. Dreams that he'd somehow missed an obvious clue. He'd wake up in a cold sweat, heart racing, and wouldn't be able to fall back asleep. His weight fluctuated dramatically. Sometimes he'd forget to eat for entire days, too focused on the search. Other times he'd stress eat, consuming junk food mindlessly while reviewing case files. His hair had gone completely gray by age 56. Deep lines etched his face, worry lines, grief lines, exhaustion lines. Friends who'd known him before April 2006 barely recognized him. "Randy, you're killing yourself," one friend said bluntly. "You need to accept that Brian might never be found." Randy's response was immediate and sharp. "Never. I will never stop looking. Would you give up on your child?" The friend backed down. Derek was equally worried about his father. He tried to convince Randy to see a therapist, to join a grief support group, to take care of himself. Randy refused. "I don't need therapy. I need to find my son." Derek felt helpless watching his father deteriorate. But he also understood that the search was the only thing keeping Randy going. If Randy stopped searching, if he accepted that Brian might be gone forever, what would happen to him? Derek feared his father might collapse entirely. So Derek supported the search, even as he privately worried it was destroying his father. The notable leads. Throughout the years 2007 to 2010, several leads seemed promising enough to warrant extensive investigation. Lead number 1, the Tennessee sighting, August 2007. A truck driver called the tip line claiming he'd seen Brian at a truck stop in Knoxville, Tennessee. "I'm 100% sure it was him. He was working at the truck stop restaurant, bussing tables." Randy drove to Tennessee immediately, a 6-hour drive. He went to the truck stop and spoke to the manager. "Do you have anyone matching this description working here?" The manager looked at Brian's photo. "That kind of looks like Derek. He started working here about a year ago." Randy's heart raced. "Can I talk to him?" "He's not scheduled today. He'll be in tomorrow." Randy got a motel room and waited. The next day, he returned to the truck stop. A young man came out from the kitchen, similar height and build to Brian, brown hair. But as soon as Randy saw his face, he knew. Not Brian. Similar features, but not his son. Randy thanked the manager and drove back to Ohio, devastated. Lead number 2, the Chicago Report, March 2008. A social worker in Chicago contacted police. She'd been working with a homeless man who seemed to have amnesia. He doesn't know his name or where he's from. But he matches the description of Brian Shaffer. Detective Edwards traveled to Chicago personally. He met with the homeless man, who was living in a shelter. The man was approximately the right age and had some physical similarities to Brian. But his face was weathered from years on the street, making definitive identification difficult. Edwards showed him Brian's photo. "Is this you?" The man stared at the photo for a long time. I don't know. Maybe?" Edwards requested a DNA test. The man agreed. The wait for results was agonizing, 5 days that felt like years. Finally, the results came back, not a match. The homeless man was not Brian Shaffer. His identity was eventually determined through fingerprints. He was a man from Wisconsin who disappeared from his own family 3 years earlier. That family was grateful to find him. Randy was grateful for that family but crushed that it wasn't Brian. Lead number 3, the online forum post, June 2009. An anonymous post appeared on a missing persons forum. "I know what happened to Brian Shaffer. He's alive. I can't say more publicly, but if his family contacts me privately, I'll provide proof." Randy, who monitored these forums obsessively, saw the post immediately. He contacted the forum administrator, who provided the user's IP address to police. Edwards traced the IP to an address in Columbus. Police visited the address. It belonged to a 19-year-old college student. When confronted, the student admitted he'd made the post as a social experiment. "I wanted to see how people would react. I didn't think anyone would actually believe it." He was prosecuted for fraud and received probation. Randy was furious, but there was nothing he could do. The cruelty of people using Brian's disappearance for attention or pranks was something Randy never got used to. Lead number 4, The Private Investigator's Theory, November 2010. Randy hired another private investigator, his third, named Jennifer Cole. Cole had a different approach than previous investigators. She specialized in behavioral analysis and constructed a detailed psychological profile of Brian. After 3 months of investigation, Cole presented her theory. "I believe Brian is alive and deliberately disappeared. His mother's death triggered a psychological crisis. He decided he couldn't continue with his life as it was. The Miami trip was supposed to be his escape, but he couldn't wait 2 more days. So on April 1st, he made a spontaneous decision to disappear. He left through the service exit, hitchhiked or walked out of Columbus, and started over somewhere new. He's probably working cash jobs, possibly in a rural area or small town where he can fly under the radar." Randy wanted to believe this theory because it meant Brian was alive. But when Cole admitted she had no concrete evidence to support it, just psychological profiling and speculation, Randy was disappointed. He paid her fee, $10,000, and moved on. By 2010, 4 years after Brian's disappearance, Randy had spent over $100,000 of his own money on the search. Private investigators. Reward funds. Flyers. Travel expenses. Media campaigns. His savings were depleted. He'd taken out a second mortgage on his house. He'd liquidated his retirement accounts. Finding Brian had become his life's mission, and he was willing to sacrifice everything for it. But the years of disappointment, of dead-end leads, of near misses that turned out to be nothing, were taking their toll. Randy was exhausted. Physically, emotionally, financially exhausted. But he couldn't stop. Because stopping meant admitting defeat. And Randy Shaffer would never admit defeat when it came to finding his son. April 2, 2016 marked 10 years since Brian Shaffer disappeared. A decade without answers. A decade of searching. A decade of hope slowly eroding into despair. Randy Shaffer was now 62 years old. He looked 75. The years of stress, sleepless nights, and relentless searching had aged him dramatically. He'd suffered a heart attack in 2012, a relatively minor one, but a warning sign that his body was failing. His doctor ordered him to reduce stress, exercise, and eat better. Randy largely ignored this advice. How could he reduce stress when his son was missing? How could he prioritize his own health when Brian might be out there somewhere, waiting to be found? Derek, now 39 and with 3 children of his own, had moved from Ohio to North Carolina several years earlier. He'd needed distance from the consuming nature of his father's search. He called Randy weekly, visited a few times a year, but had largely accepted that Brian was gone. "I still hope," Derek told his wife. "I still wonder. But I've accepted that we may never know what happened. Dad never will." The relationship between Randy and Derek had been strained for years. Derek felt neglected, even after Brian disappeared, even after their mother died. Randy's entire focus remained on Brian. Derek's wedding in 2008? Randy attended but left early to follow up on a tip. The birth of Derek's first child in 2010? Randy visited for one day, then returned to Columbus to continue searching. Derek understood intellectually that his father was consumed by grief and determination. But emotionally, it still hurt. He'd lost his brother and his mother. But he'd also, in many ways, lost his father. The 10th anniversary event. Randy organized a major event for the 10th anniversary. He called it 10 Years of Hope, Finding Brian Shaffer. It was held at the Ohio State University Student Union on April 2, 2016. The event included a panel discussion with Detective Edwards, now retired, forensic experts, reintenter, M. continuer, and missing persons advocates. A presentation of new age-progressed images showing what Brian might look like at age 37. A candlelight vigil. Renewed media attention with interviews and coverage. Randy had hoped for a large turnout. About 120 people attended, a respectable number, but not the hundreds he'd envisioned. The reality was that 10 years is a long time. People move on. New tragedies capture attention. Old mysteries fade from public consciousness. But those who did attend were dedicated. Brian's former classmates, now practicing physicians, came to show support. Alexis attended with her husband and 2 young children. It was the first time she'd participated in a Brian Shaffer event in years. She'd built a new life, but Brian's disappearance still haunted her. "I think about him all the time," Alexis told a reporter at the event. "I wonder where he is. I wonder if he's still alive. I wonder if he thinks about me." It's a grief that never fully heals because there's no closure. Detective Edwards, now retired and working as a private security consultant, spoke candidly about the case. "In my 30-year career, the Brian Shaffer case is the one that keeps me up at night. I've worked hundreds of investigations. Most of them, we eventually got answers, maybe not the answers families wanted, but answers. But Brian? It's like he stepped into another dimension." Edwards described the investigation in detail, walking the audience through the timeline, the security footage, the various theories. "I truly believe someone knows what happened that night. Whether they were involved, or they saw something, or they heard something, someone knows. And I'm asking that person, it's been 10 years. Your conscience must be heavy. Do the right thing. Come forward." The forensic experts on the panel discussed new technologies that could potentially help solve the case. Advanced DNA testing that could extract usable profiles from degraded samples. Facial recognition software that could scan surveillance footage and social media for matches. Ground-penetrating radar that could search large areas for buried remains. But all of these technologies required something to work with: a DNA sample, a clear photo, a specific area to search. Without a body, without new evidence, even cutting-edge technology had its limits. The highlight of the event was the unveiling of new age-progressed images. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Adults had created updated renderings showing what Brian might look like at age 37. When Randy saw the images, he gasped. The progression showed Brian with slightly receding hair, a more mature face, perhaps some early wrinkles around the eyes. He looked like someone's suburban dad, which is exactly what he might have been if his life had continued normally. "That's my boy," Randy said, tears streaming down his face. "That's what he'd look like." The images were distributed to media outlets and posted across social media. Randy hoped, prayed, that someone, somewhere would recognize that face. The candlelight vigil that evening drew about 200 people. They walked from the Student Union to the Ugly Tuna Saloon, now closed and slated for demolition as part of a redevelopment project. The building that held the last confirmed images of Brian would soon be gone. Randy felt like he was losing even that connection to his son. At the vigil, Randy gave what would become one of his most memorable speeches. 10 years ago, my son walked into that building behind me and never walked out. For 10 years, I've searched for him. For 10 years, I've hoped for answers. For 10 years, I've refused to give up. Randy's voice was strong despite his age and exhaustion. Some people think I'm crazy. Some people think I should accept that Brian is gone and move on with my life. But I can't. I won't. Because Brian is more than a cold case. He's my son. And as long as I'm breathing, I'll keep looking for him. Randy held up a candle. If you're out there, Brian, know that I'm still looking. Know that I'll never stop. And if someone took you from us, know that justice will come eventually. It may take another 10 years. It may take 20. But the truth always comes out. The vigil ended with a moment of silence. 200 candles flickered in the darkness outside the Ugly Tuna. And Randy Shaffer stood among them, praying for a miracle that seemed less likely with each passing year. The online community. By 2016, Brian's case had become one of the most discussed unsolved mysteries on the internet. Reddit's r/unresolved mysteries had dozens of threads dedicated to analyzing every aspect of his disappearance. Web sleuths had an entire sub-forum devoted to Brian's case. YouTube channels had produced numerous documentaries and analysis videos, some with millions of views. This online attention was both helpful and harmful. On one hand, it kept Brian's case in the public eye. Every time someone new discovered the case, they might be the person with crucial information. The online community also discovered things professional investigators had missed. An amateur sleuth enhanced security footage and identified a person in the background who'd never been interviewed. A Reddit user with architectural experience created a detailed 3D model of the Ugly Tuna layout, helping visualize possible exit routes. A Web Sleuths member discovered that one of the bar employees that night had a criminal record that hadn't been disclosed, though this ultimately led nowhere. But the online attention also created problems. Conspiracy theories ran rampant. Brian was killed by a satanic cult operating in Columbus. The government disappeared Brian because he knew something about a medical conspiracy. Brian was abducted by aliens. These theories, while obviously false, muddied the waters and made serious investigation more difficult. Worse, innocent people continued to be targeted with harassment. Clint Florence, who'd moved to Seattle and changed careers, was still receiving death threats from people convinced he killed Brian. Bar employees from 2006 were doxxed, with their current addresses and employers posted online. Even the two women Brian talked to at 1:55 a.m., who'd been cleared by police, were subjected to online abuse. Randy regularly had to issue statements asking people to stop harassing potential witnesses. "You're making it harder to solve this case," Randy posted on social media. "If you harass people, they won't cooperate with investigators. Please, let law enforcement handle the investigation." But controlling the internet mob was impossible. The psychics. As the years passed and conventional investigation yielded nothing, Randy became increasingly desperate. He consulted with dozens of psychics and mediums, despite skepticism from law enforcement and his family. "I know most of them are frauds," Randy admitted to Derek. "But what if one of them isn't? What if one of them can actually help?" The psychics offered various visions. One claimed Brian was in water, near a bridge, in a rural area. Randy spent weeks searching bridges throughout Ohio. Nothing. Another claimed Brian was alive and living in the Southwest, possibly Arizona or New Mexico. Randy made 2 trips to the region, showing Brian's photo at homeless shelters and truck stops. Nothing. A third claimed to communicate with Brian's spirit, delivering messages that Brian was at peace and watching over his family. This disturbed Randy deeply. It implied Brian was dead, which Randy refused to accept. A particularly manipulative psychic charged Randy $5,000 for a detailed spiritual investigation. She claimed Brian had been killed and buried in a specific wooded area in southern Ohio. Randy organized a massive search of the area with volunteers and cadaver dogs. They searched for 3 days. Nothing. When Randy confronted the psychic about the failed search, she claimed her spiritual connection had been blocked by negative energy. Randy realized he'd been scammed, but it was too late. Derek was furious when he learned about this. "Dad, these people are taking advantage of you. They're preying on your grief." "I know," Randy said quietly. "But I'm out of options, Derek. The police have no leads. The private investigators found nothing. What else am I supposed to do?" Derek had no answer. The health crisis. In September 2017, Randy suffered a major heart attack. He was found by a neighbor, collapsed in his driveway, clutching his chest. An ambulance rushed him to the hospital. He underwent emergency surgery. 2 stents were placed in his coronary arteries. The cardiologist was blunt. "Mr. Shaffer, you're lucky to be alive. But if you don't make major lifestyle changes, the next heart attack will kill you." Randy spent a week in the hospital. Derek flew in from North Carolina to be with his father. Sitting by Randy's hospital bed, Derek finally said what he'd been thinking for years. "Dad, you have to stop. This search is killing you. Literally." Randy, weak but defiant, shook his head. "I can't stop. Brian needs me. Brian is gone, Dad." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Randy's eyes filled with tears. "Don't say that. You don't know that. It's been 11 years. If Brian was alive, he would have contacted someone by now. He wouldn't let you suffer like this. He might not be able to. He might be injured, or have amnesia, or be held somewhere against his will." Derek took his father's hand. "Dad, I love you. I miss Brian too. But you're killing yourself. And Brian wouldn't want that. Mom wouldn't want that. They'd want you to live your life." Randy pulled his hand away. "I don't have a life without Brian. Finding him is my life." Derek left the hospital that night knowing nothing had changed. His father would recover from this heart attack and return to the search. And it would probably kill him eventually. The 2018 breakthrough that wasn't. In April 2018, 12 years after Brian's disappearance, a major break seemed to occur. A construction crew demolishing the old ugly tuna building discovered something in a sealed-off section of the building. Behind a false wall in the service corridor, they found a small space, about 4 feet by 6 feet. It had been hidden when renovations were done years earlier, essentially creating a void space that wasn't reflected in any building plans. Inside the space, workers found several empty beer bottles, a jacket, a cell phone. The discovery made national news. Items discovered in building where medical student vanished. Randy's phone rang off the hook. Media. Friends. People offering congratulations that Brian had finally been found. But Randy waited for official word from police. Detective Torres, who'd taken over the case when Edwards retired, called Randy personally. "Mr. Shaffer, we recovered some items from the Ugly Tuna building. We're testing them now. Is it Brian? We don't know yet. The items will be tested for DNA and fingerprints. We'll have results in a few days." Those few days were agonizing. Randy couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't focus on anything. Was this finally the answer? After 12 years, would he finally know what happened to his son? On the third day, Torres called again. "Mr. Shaffer, I'm sorry. The items don't belong to Brian." Randy's heart sank. "Are you sure? The DNA from the jacket and cell phone doesn't match Brian. The phone itself is from 2010, 4 years after Brian disappeared. The items were left there by construction workers or homeless people who accessed the building after it closed." Randy thanked Torres and hung up. Then he sat alone in his house and cried. For a few days, he'd allowed himself to hope. And having that hope crushed was almost unbearable. The current status, 2019 to 2025. As of 2025, 19 years after Brian Shaffer's disappearance, the case remains officially unsolved. Randy Shaffer is now 71 years old. His health has declined significantly. In addition to heart disease, he's been diagnosed with diabetes and high blood pressure. His doctors have told him repeatedly that stress is killing him. Randy knows this but feels powerless to change. The search for Brian has become his identity. Without it, who is he? Just an old man who lost his wife and son. The search gives him purpose, even if it's destroying him. Randy still maintains the Find Brian Shaffer website. He still posts updates on social media. He still follows up on tips, though they come less frequently now. He still offers a reward, now $200,000, essentially everything he has left. But the intensity of the search has diminished. Randy can't physically do what he once did. He can't drive hundreds of miles on a moment's notice to follow a lead. He can't walk through woods and parks searching for evidence. His body simply won't let him anymore. Derek visits his father a few times a year. Each visit, he notices more decline. His father is frilier, older, more tired. But still, Randy won't stop. Just one more year, Randy always says. Maybe next year we'll find him. Derek has stopped arguing. He's accepted that his father will search until the day he dies. And when that day comes, when Randy Shaffer finally passes away, the most dedicated, relentless advocate for Brian Shaffer will be gone. Who will continue the search then? Derek has his own life, his own family. He'll always wonder what happened to his brother, but he can't dedicate his life to the search the way his father has. Alexis has moved on, building a new life while carrying Brian's memory with her. Brian's former friends and classmates have careers, families, responsibilities. They think about Brian on anniversaries, but they've accepted they may never know what happened. When Randy is gone, Brian's case will truly become cold. One more unsolved mystery. One more person who vanished without explanation. One more family forever changed by an unanswered question. What happened to Brian Shaffer? After 19 years, we can reassess the theories about Brian's disappearance with the benefit of time and perspective. Some theories have become more likely. Others have faded away. Let's examine what we know and what we can reasonably conclude. What we know for certain. 1. Brian Shaffer was last seen on security camera at 1:57 a.m. on April 2, 2006, walking toward the back of the Ugly Tuna Saloon. 2. He was never captured on camera leaving the bar through the main entrance. 3. His cell phone last pinged at 2:01 a.m. and then went dead. 4. He has never accessed his bank accounts, $850 remains untouched. 5. His social security number has never been used. 6. No body has ever been found despite extensive searches. 7. No credible confirmed sightings have occurred in 19 years. 8. There is no physical evidence of foul play, no blood, no weapon, no witnesses to violence. What this tells us. The combination of these facts creates a very specific profile of what must have happened. Brian either A. died shortly after leaving the bar, and his body was concealed so well that 19 years of searching hasn't found it. Or B. is alive but living completely off-grid with no access to banking, no official employment, no digital footprint, extraordinarily difficult for nearly 2 decades. Option A is far more likely than option B. The most probable scenario, 70% likelihood. Brian left the Ugly Tuna through the service exit sometime between 1:57 a.m. and 2:01 a.m. The service door alarm was malfunctioning, allowing him to exit without alerting bar staff. He either voluntarily went out the back, looking for a different bathroom, getting some air, or following someone. Was lured out by someone who offered him something, drugs, alcohol, a party. Was forced out at gunpoint or knife point. In the alley, Brian encountered foul play. The most likely perpetrator, a stranger with violent intentions. Possibly someone who targeted intoxicated young men leaving bars. Possibly someone who intended to rob Brian and the situation escalated. Possibly a random violent encounter. Brian was killed, likely quickly, explaining the narrow 4-minute window before his phone died. His body was transported away from the immediate area, possibly in the white van that the homeless witness reported seeing. The body was disposed of in a location that has not been searched or was disposed of in a way that prevents discovery. Buried in a remote rural area. Submerged in a body of water far from Columbus. Concealed in a location that has since been developed over, building foundation, parking lot, etc. Disposed of in a way we haven't anticipated, industrial site, landfill, etc. The killer got lucky with timing, camera blind spots, and the malfunctioning alarm. Or the killer was familiar with the area and knew how to avoid detection. Either way, they've successfully hidden Brian's body for 19 years. Why this scenario is most likely. It explains how Brian left without being seen on the main cameras. It explains the sudden cessation of all activity, phone, bank accounts. It explains why no body has been found, deliberate concealment. It aligns with the statistics, most missing persons who are never found are deceased. It explains why Brian has never contacted family, he can't, he's deceased. It requires no elaborate conspiracy or multiple people keeping secrets. The second most probable scenario, 20% likelihood. Brian had a medical emergency inside or immediately outside the bar. He collapsed from an undiagnosed heart condition, seizure, or alcohol-related incident. Bar staff found him deceased or dying. Panicking about liability and potential lawsuits, someone made a terrible decision to conceal his death rather than call 911. Brian's body was removed through the service exit after the bar closed and cameras stopped being actively monitored. The body was disposed of somewhere it wouldn't be found. Multiple people would have to be involved in this scenario: bar staff, possibly management. They've maintained silence for 19 years. Why this scenario has some support. It explains why Brian was never seen leaving on camera. He left as a corpse. It explains the lack of struggle or violence, medical emergency, not murder. Establishments have panicked and covered up deaths before to avoid liability. It explains why no witnesses reported seeing anything suspicious. Why this scenario is less likely. Maintaining a conspiracy among multiple people for 19 years is very difficult. Someone usually talks eventually: deathbed confession, guilt, falling out among conspirators. The building was searched extensively with cadaver dogs. If Brian died there, trace evidence should exist. This requires significant criminal behavior from people with no history of such behavior. The third scenario, 8% likelihood. Brian voluntarily disappeared and is alive somewhere. He left through the service exit deliberately, evading cameras. He had more cash saved than anyone knew about. He hitchhiked or got a ride out of Columbus. He's lived off-grid for 19 years, working cash jobs, using a false identity, never contacting family. Why this is unlikely. No financial activity in 19 years is nearly impossible. Living off-grid for 2 decades is extraordinarily difficult in modern America. Brian's personality doesn't fit someone who would abandon family. He was excited about his Miami trip. Why disappear 2 days before? No credible sightings in 19 years despite massive publicity. His phone dying at 2:01 a.m. suggests something sudden and involuntary happened. The fourth scenario, 2% likelihood. Brian was killed by someone he knew. Most commonly suspected is Clint Florence. Clint and Brian had a conflict, either that night or pre-existing. After Meredith left, Clint returned to the bar. He and Brian went out the service exit to argue or fight. Brian was killed, and Clint disposed of the body. Why this is unlikely. Clint is on camera leaving before Brian disappears. He's on camera at the next bar by 2:15 a.m. Timeline is extremely tight for him to return, kill Brian, and dispose of body. No clear motive exists. Clint has maintained innocence for 19 years. No physical evidence links him to foul play. The failed polygraph and refusal to continue cooperating raised suspicions but aren't evidence of guilt. Many innocent people fail polygraphs due to stress or anxiety. Lawyering up was probably smart legal advice, not proof of guilt. Other scenarios, less than 1% combined likelihood. Brian is still alive but suffering from amnesia. Brian was killed by a serial killer or cult. Brian was trafficked. Brian was killed by someone connected to law enforcement who covered it up. Brian is trapped somewhere unable to escape. These scenarios are theoretically possible but have no evidentiary support. The most frustrating reality. After 19 years, we're no closer to knowing definitively what happened to Brian Shaffer. The most likely scenario, killed by a stranger and body hidden, is frustratingly vague. Without a body, without witnesses, without physical evidence, it's impossible to know. Who killed Brian, if he was killed? Why he was targeted? Where his body is? Whether justice will ever be served? Brian Shaffer truly vanished into thin air. And unless someone comes forward with information, or unless his remains are discovered by chance, this mystery may never be solved. Despite 19 years passing, Brian Shaffer's case could still theoretically be solved. Here are scenarios that could provide answers. Scenario 1: Remains are discovered. The most likely breakthrough would be the discovery of human remains that are identified as Brian through DNA or dental records. This could happen. A construction project uncovers buried remains. A drought reveals remains in a body of water. Someone searching woods or rural areas stumbles upon a burial site. A property owner discovers remains on their land. If Brian's remains are found, modern forensic analysis could potentially determine cause of death, approximate time of death, whether the body was moved post-mortem, possible trace evidence linking to a killer. Even without a confession, remains would give the family closure and might provide investigative leads. Scenario 2: Deathbed confession. If someone was involved in Brian's death, whether as killer or accomplice, they might confess as death approaches. Guilt is a powerful motivator. Many cold cases have been solved by deathbed confessions. Scenario 3: Someone breaks silence. If multiple people were involved, the bar cover-up theory, one of them might eventually come forward. After a falling out with co-conspirators. Due to mental health crisis. Because they can no longer live with the guilt. In exchange for immunity from prosecution. Scenario 4: Forensic genealogy. If any biological evidence exists, hair, blood, etc., that doesn't belong to Brian, it could potentially be tested using modern DNA techniques. Even degraded samples can sometimes yield partial DNA profiles. That profile could be run through genetic genealogy databases, GEDmatch, etc., potentially identifying a suspect through familial DNA matches. This is how the Golden State Killer was caught in 2018, 40 years after his crimes. But this scenario requires biological evidence, which may not exist or may have been lost/destroyed. Scenario 5: New witness comes forward. Someone who was in the area that night but never came forward might finally do so. They were underage and drinking, so they stayed quiet. They were doing something illegal and didn't want police attention. They didn't realize what they saw was important. They've been scared but finally found courage. Even a small detail, a license plate, a description of someone suspicious, a piece of Brian's clothing seen somewhere, could break the case open. Scenario 6: Technology advances. Future technology might provide solutions we can't currently imagine. Enhanced facial recognition that can scan 19 years of surveillance footage and social media. Ground-penetrating radar sensitive enough to scan large areas quickly. AI that can find patterns in evidence humans missed. Scenario 7: Brian is found alive. This is extremely unlikely but theoretically possible. If Brian is alive with amnesia or living under a false identity, he could be identified. Through fingerprints if he's arrested. Through facial recognition technology. Through someone recognizing age-progressed photos. Through him eventually recovering memory. But after 19 years with zero confirmed sightings or activity, this scenario is highly improbable. What would need to happen? For any of these scenarios to work, one thing is essential. Someone needs to know something. Someone saw something that night. Someone heard something. Someone helped dispose of a body. Someone has information they've never shared. And that someone needs to come forward. The statute of limitations. For anyone worried about legal consequences of coming forward. There is no statute of limitations on murder. But if someone helped conceal a death but wasn't the killer, they could potentially negotiate immunity in exchange for information. If someone witnessed something but didn't report it, they wouldn't face charges for that. The goal is finding Brian and getting answers for his family. Law enforcement would likely be willing to offer deals to accomplish that goal. Randy's final appeal. Randy Shaffer, now 71 and in failing health, continues to make appeals. To whoever knows what happened to Brian, I'm an old man. I don't have much time left. Before I die, I want to know what happened to my son. I want to be able to bury him next to his mother. I want to give him peace. If you were involved, I don't hate you. I just want the truth. If you witnessed something, please come forward. If you know where Brian is, please tell us. Even an anonymous tip could change everything. 19 years is long enough. The truth deserves to come out. Brian deserves justice. And his family deserves closure. Brian Randall Shaffer would be 46 years old today. If his life had continued as planned, he would have graduated from medical school in 2008. Completed his residency in family medicine around 2011 to 2012. Perhaps married Alexis or someone else if their relationship hadn't worked out. Maybe had children, kids who would now be in middle school or high school. He'd be an experienced physician with a thriving practice. Patients would trust him, appreciate his compassion, benefit from his care. He'd have made a difference in countless lives. That's the future that was stolen from Brian Shaffer on April 2, 2006. And stolen from everyone who loved him. Renee Shaffer died never knowing what happened to her son. Randy Shaffer has spent 19 years searching, sacrificing his health, his finances, his relationships, everything, in pursuit of answers that remain elusive. Derek Shaffer lost his brother and in many ways lost his father too, as Randy became consumed by the search. Alexis built a new life but carries the weight of unanswered questions. Brian's friends, classmates, and professors were robbed of knowing what contribution he would have made to medicine and the world. And Brian himself, if he's deceased, as seems most likely, was robbed of the life he'd worked so hard to build. The ripple effect. Brian's disappearance changed more than just his family's lives. Ohio State University implemented new safety protocols for students going out in the Arena District. Columbus bars enhanced their security systems and emergency procedures. Missing persons investigations in Columbus are now taken more seriously from day one. Families of other missing persons have reached out to Randy for advice and support. He's become an advocate, helping others navigate the nightmare he's lived. Brian's case has educated thousands about the reality of missing persons. They don't all run away. They don't all want to be missing. Sometimes good people just vanish, and despite everyone's best efforts, they're never found. The legacy. If nothing else, Brian Shaffer will not be forgotten. His case is taught in criminology classes as an example of a baffling disappearance. True crime enthusiasts study the details, hoping to spot something investigators missed. Every April 2nd, social media fills with posts remembering Brian. 19 years ago today, Brian Shaffer walked into a bar and never came out. Still thinking about him. Justice for Brian Shaffer. Never forgotten. His face, frozen at age 27 in the security footage, is recognized by millions who've never met him. And his story serves as a reminder. Life is fragile. People we love can vanish in an instant. And sometimes, despite our best efforts, we never get the answers we desperately need. Randy's final years. Randy Shaffer knows he doesn't have much time left. His doctors have been frank, his heart is failing, and the years of stress have taken an irreversible toll. He might have 5 years. Maybe 10 if he's lucky. But probably less. Randy has made peace with the likelihood that he'll die without knowing what happened to Brian. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but after 19 years, it's the reality he faces. He's updated his will to ensure that the search continues after his death. A trust fund with $50,000 remains available for any credible information about Brian. He's designated a lawyer to manage any future tips or leads. He's written letters to be opened after his death, to Brian, if he's somehow still alive, to Derek, to Alexis, to Detective Torres, to the media. In these letters, he expresses his love, his hope, and his undying belief that the truth will eventually emerge. Randy has also planned his funeral. He wants to be buried next to Renee, with an empty plot on his other side reserved for Brian. For when we bring him home, Randy explains. Derek finds this heartbreaking but doesn't argue. His father deserves this small hope. The question that remains. Where is Brian Shaffer? After 19 years, hundreds of tips, thousands of hours of investigation, millions of dollars spent, and a father's life dedicated to the search. We still don't know. He walked into a bar on April 1, 2006, and was swallowed by the night. Somewhere, his body lies hidden. Or somewhere, against all odds, he's alive but unreachable. The truth exists. Someone knows it. And maybe, just maybe, someday, that someone will have the courage to speak. Until then, Brian Shaffer remains one of America's most baffling missing persons cases. A medical student who vanished into thin air. A son who never came home. A mystery that haunts everyone who encounters it. The vanishing of Brian Shaffer is one of the most perplexing mysteries in modern American history. Security cameras captured him entering a bar with one entrance. They captured him inside the bar throughout the night. But they never captured him leaving. It seems impossible. But it happened. 19 years later, Brian's father continues searching, even as his own health fails. 19 years later, the question remains, where is Brian Shaffer? If this case affected you, here's how you can help. Hit that like button. Every like pushes this video to more people, and maybe one of them has information. Subscribe to Cold Case Dossier for more deep dives into unsolved mysteries that deserve answers. Turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Comment below, where are you watching from? Do you remember when this case broke? Do you have theories about what happened? Most importantly, share this video. Post it on Facebook, Reddit, Twitter, anywhere. Brian's face needs to stay in the public eye. Someone out there knows something. And that someone might finally come forward if they see this video. Next week, we'll investigate another case where someone vanished without a trace, another family still searching for answers, another mystery demanding to be solved. Until then, remember, missing persons aren't just statistics. They're real people with families who love them, futures that were stolen, and stories that deserve to be told. Brian Shaffer deserves to be found. Randy Shaffer deserves to know what happened to his son before he dies. And whoever is responsible deserves to be held accountable. For Brian. For Randy. For everyone still searching. This is Cold Case Dossier. Stay curious. Stay compassionate. And never stop demanding truth. And if you were in Columbus on April 1, 2006. If you were at the Ugly Tuna that night. If you saw something, heard something, know something. Please make the call.